Well, hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday the 15th, our only meeting in July, and then we'll see you again in a month. My name is Mayor Erica A. Stewart, and I am calling the regular meeting of the City Council to order and to state that all of us are here in person. So will Councilmember Boswell lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. So today we are going to start off our, no proclamations today, but we will start our meeting off with a special presentation from the Central Coast Community Choice Energy. So I believe we have Das Williams and Spencer Brandt and Judy Young to present the report.
Mayor Stewart, council members, it's an honor to be here. My name is Das Williams, Senior Advisor for Legislative Affairs. With me is Spencer Brandt, Community Relations Manager, and Judy Young, Senior Customers Accounts Manager. We are here to give you the annual update on 3C's programs, our purchases on your behalf, and what to look for in the future. 3C is a public agency that sources electricity for communities along the Central Coast. We work in partnership with PG&E, who continue to manage the transmission and delivery of energy to customers. So while they maintain the lines and infrastructure, 3C purchases the electricity for generation projects such as solar, wind, and geothermal. We service 30 cities across 5 counties, providing clean and renewable electricity to 1.2 million people. This January, the city of Atascadero and the county of San Luis Obispo became the newest member agencies of 3CE. Go ahead and do the next slide. That's nice. Oh, great. In 2024, we delivered 409 megawatts of renewable electricity, which is the slide after this. That's enough to power 350,000 homes entirely with clean energy. By doing so, we avoided almost half a million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. And to give you an idea of how that rates, that's equivalent to taking 105,000 gas-powered cars off the road. We are on a path to deliver 100% clean and renewable energy to our customers somewhere between 10 and 15 years ahead of the state climate goals. For example, we already have contracts for 64% of our energy from renewables by October 2028. I expect that to be a conservative estimate. We'll probably sign another PPA between now and then. And then we've gotten a lot of questions this year about battery energy storage. So I think it's just good to put it out there. Why is that something that the state is investing in? It's essential for California's carbon-free energy transition, but just as importantly, to customer affordability. Batteries store renewable energy when the sun shines and the wind blows, then releases it when it's needed. At a utility scale, they reduce fossil fuel reliance during peak hours, lowering electricity rates. For individual customers, home batteries provide backup power and store cheap renewable energy for use during expensive peak hours. There is also a third reason why it helps with affordability is 1/3 of our generation costs that all our customers are paying is from resource adequacy, a backup product that you've all heard of. The only renewable facilities that get strong amounts of RA is when you pair a resource with a battery. And so if we're not going to buy RA on the open market, which unfortunately keeps old, dirty power plants alive, then the alternative, both financially and with our values, is to have batteries that are paired with another resource. Batteries are also important for reliability. I'm going to put up a slide here that's a graph. You all remember the near emergency we had on Labor Day 2022, right? This was California's last flex alert, statewide call to reduce energy consumption. This graph shows our energy mix that day. The red represent fossil fuels, the largest share that day. Green shows intermittent renewables that spike during daylight and disappear at sunset. Notice the tiny orange line at the bottom. That's batteries charging. And then you see farther along the graph at the top is batteries discharging. Now let's compare this with a more recent heat wave. On July 4th last year, there was an event that could have been just as severe, but fortunately none of us remember it. It's because there were resources in place that it never had to be a flex alert, it never had to be an emergency. The green renewable bar is higher because more solar has come online. The red fossil fuel bar shrank, but most notably, the orange bar more than tripled in 2 years. Charging in the morning and deploying during peak evening demand. This is why batteries are key to reliability. At 3CE, we've also received questions, next slide, about battery safety. And this is obviously a concern to us. So I'd like to highlight several key facts. First, 3CE has no power purchase agreements with indoor battery facilities like that at Moss Landing. There's actually really only 2 facilities like that in the state. All battery storage projects that 3CE contracts with must use containerized systems equipped with individual fire suppression units and meet the latest fire and building code requirements. This safety data that you can see on this slide is also very encouraging. Battery system failure rates have dropped 98% since 2018, even as global battery deployment has increased by more than 250,000%. These improvements in reliability coincide with massive growth in the technology's adoption worldwide. At 3C, we respect the land use and building authority of our member agencies. It's your decision to make. But we appreciate the opportunities your council and staff have provided us to explain how this relates to rates and reliability and renewable goals. And I'm going to turn things over to Spencer Brandt to go further into the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Stewart, for the opportunity to present. Next slide, please. At 3CE, we have made investments in cutting-edge energy storage technology, and one example of that is the Willow Rock Energy Storage Center. This project will use compressed air to power turbines on demand and will be the largest compressed air energy storage project in the world. Once completed, it will provide 200 megawatts of power for 3CE's customers, providing critical energy during peak hour demand times between 4 and 9 p.m. each day. Next slide. We also have a number of exciting projects that are coming online soon that are solar plus storage. Atlas Solar plus Storage will be one of the largest solar plus storage projects in North America, and Aratina Solar plus Storage is projected to come online for our customers next year. These projects also join Victory Pass, which came online in May of last year, and cumulatively will provide enough power to power over 250,000 homes on the Central Coast. Next slide, please. At 3CE, we know that delivering renewable energy is only part of the equation, and connecting with our communities is a key part of our mission. So in 2024, our outreach team engaged across the region, sponsoring events, hosting webinars, and leading workshops about our energy programs. To better serve our diverse region, 3CE has added bilingual staff, expanded translated materials, and created an action plan to support underserved communities. We've also partnered with community-based organizations, and our customer service hotline is capable of providing assistance in over 150 languages, including English, Spanish, and Mixteco. Next slide, please. 3CE's energy programs provide customers with tools that help them electrify and put money back in our constituents' pockets. And our flagship program, Electrify Your Ride, may be something that you're familiar with. As a side note, I know that many of your constituents are aware of it because the city of San Luis Obispo had utilized this program more than any of our other jurisdictions. This provides between $1,000 and $4,000 for the purchase of a qualifying new or used electric vehicle. Additional programs also cover the cost of electrifying home appliances like a heat pump water heater or installing a home battery. We also have the agricultural electrification program, which provides money to support electric equipment needs of that sector. Next slide, please. We also have programs specifically in place for public agencies to help cover the cost of replacing fleet vehicles, including everything from light-duty pool cars to heavy-duty equipment like street sweepers. And sister programs include Plan Your Fleet and Charge Your Fleet to help supplement the planning and infrastructure costs of electrification. Our electric bus program is often utilized by school districts as well as municipal transit services like Slow Transit. And finally, our Reach Codes program provides technical assistance for city staff as they develop energy efficiency requirements. I also want to talk a little bit about a program as it relates or dive deeper into electric vehicle charging. The Charge Your Fleet program can provide between either $5,000 per level 2 charging port or up to $100,000 for a level 3 fast charger. We know that these chargers are very in demand, both from public agencies that are electrifying and also for members of the public. And there is an additional program that is geared towards the commercial side for commercial property owners to pursue installing electric vehicle chargers on commercial properties. We actually have a webinar that I will be leaving a flyer with the city clerk for that is really geared towards helping property owners access the Electrify Your Ride concierge service. So this program helps property owners evaluate property and design a charging station plan, secure bids from contractors, and then guides them through the construction process all the way to the acquisition of rebates. Next slide, please. Since 2018, across our service territory, nearly 7,000 customers have received rebates through our programs and incentives. That's over $11 million back in our customers' pockets, over $4 million of which of that was for income qualified customers and underserved communities. Next slide. And I'm sure you're curious about how the city of San Luis Obispo measures up when it comes to utilizing those rebates and incentives. And I apologize if the text on this slide is hard to read because frankly, there's a lot of utilization going on here. You will also see statistics on this slide from a benchmark jurisdiction of similar size that we're including to help give an idea of comparison. One of the many projects that I'd like to highlight on this slide is pictured there. 3CE provided $400,000 for the purchase of 6 electric buses for Slow Transit. And our team that works right across the street is always really excited to see them in service across from our office. Additionally, we provided funding for an electric vehicle used by your parking enforcement team, as well as an electric forklift at the wastewater treatment recovery facility. And I mentioned already just the very high utilization of Electrify Your Ride here in the city of San Luis Obispo, which should really be a badge of honor and pride. And with that, I'd like to hand it back over to Mr. Williams, who's going to provide a timely legislative update.
Well, first of all, I just want to tell you that there's a reason why your utilization is so high. There's definitely a correlation between how active a member agency's staff and council members or supervisors are about talking about our programs and how highly utilized they are. So I just want to thank the mayor, council, and staff for their deep participation at 3CE. It really makes it, that slide really shows that it makes a difference. There are some real challenges legislatively. I suppose our little mini unit in legislative affairs, community relations, is we're new. And the reason why we've been formed is because a third of our generation cost is regulatory in nature, and because of the severe challenges that changes in law and regulation are posing. So one of our responsibilities is to advocate on your behalf and that of the constituents of San Luis Obispo at a state level, at a federal level. The biggest challenge is the provisions of HR 1, what you know in the media as the big, beautiful bill. You probably already know about its impacts with ICE funding and healthcare, but I can tell you it's a challenge to providing energy at affordable rates. The largest change will be a discontinuation of the tax credits that solar and wind developers use to build their projects. That is unlikely to produce the result that is being pushed, which is to push things back over to natural gas. While that's a relief to me as someone who's concerned about climate change, the price differential is so high, meaning wind and solar paired with batteries is so much cheaper than natural gas that even with the tax credits, people are still going to be leaning on solar and wind. But some of the projects won't make it financially. So you're going to have a constriction of supply just when demand is going up because of AI data centers all over the country and other increases of use. That's going to, in the long run, make energy more expensive. I can tell you that that probably won't be felt next year, where we're forecasted to have, static rates, but we could feel it in subsequent years. There will also be very big changes for the people in this audience, and the people watching, and the people you represent. Typically, the people who have taken advantage of our program stack that with federal incentives. So the $7,500 that someone can get that's treated as cash at the dealer, that's a federal incentive, that will go away at the end of September. That's $4,000 for a used vehicle from the federal government. People pair that with the $1,000 to $4,000 that we will send you back in the mail to really have a hefty discount off the purchase of the vehicle, which really makes many EVs price comparable or cheaper than their gas alternative with those incentives. And so many of your constituents have been waiting for the right moment to get an EV or a energy efficiency work in their home. That tax credit goes away at the end of the year. So my message is do not wait. And I think it's an important message to be out there. People look at the newspaper, they feel the darkness that comes in the age, and they wonder if there's anything to do. And I can tell you there is something to do because the carbon reduction that's achievable by this community and the other communities on the Central Coast would be considerable if we pushed this adoption forward. And I look at the example of the changeover from NEM 2 to 3. You could view that as a defeat for solar. Well, people got so animated about that solar developers sold many years worth of solar units all last year. And so I actually view it as a victory. If we collectively highlighted it as much, then we could make the same kind of victory for climate change, in combating climate change. We are also advocating on your behalf at a state level, trying to look at the future of how we can preserve affordability in this age. That's why it says resource adequacy slice of day. We are trying to change to a more efficient requirement for resource adequacy because it's become such a high cost to us. Expect us to try to run a bill next year on your behalf on that. And then the Pathways Initiative. This is something you may have heard about. It somewhat divides the environmental community, but this is the way I think about it. A regional market is a way to bring renewables to the rest of the Western United States. And what Pathways would do is create a Western regional market for energy. And it is not it's not a question of whether there will be a Western market. It's a question of whether there is going to be one that comes out of Arkansas and led by that paradigm. No pejorative towards Arkansas, but they do not have the same priority of GHG reduction that California does. Question will be, is it led by that market or is it led by California? The advantage to Californians would be the ability to sell our excess solar, which would reduce GHGs in the other parts of the Western United States and also maintain our rates at a reasonable level. And so we are, this is our highest state level legislative priority. I won't go through the details of what's happening with it right now. It's high drama in the legislature. So if you're curious and want to come over or meet me for coffee and hear the whole story, I will let you know. But just know that we are there representing you in Sacramento and the interests of clean energy and GHG reduction. With that, I just want to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for a very thorough report. Any questions? Okay, well, thank you. You did it all, and so we're all set. Oh, wait, just kidding, one more. Councilmember Francis.
Thank you guys so much for the presentation. You had mentioned on that last slide, the resource adequacy, the slice of day, and that we should expect a bill this year. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about the nature of that bill, what that would look like. Probably hasn't been all fleshed out yet, but curious to hear a little bit more.
So resource adequacy, think of it as insurance for reliability. We have to purchase this product, and what it's used for, every resource is assigned a resource adequacy value, but batteries and natural gas get the highest percentage. And then people will sell that RA value separate from the energy. And so because we don't own any natural gas facilities, we're more interested in clean air resources, we have to buy RA. But buying RA on the open market does keep these older plants alive, which is a disadvantage. And so the PUC has moved towards, instead of a daily value assigned every energy provider, they have moved to a every hour of every day value assigned. We fundamentally first think that the value of RA is only during the times when energy is scarce, which is beginning right about now, every single day. It's important for people to know the renewable revolution is here, 8 hours a day already. If you're using energy, essentially during business hours, then it's 80 to 100% carbon free now. But it all gets bad when the sun starts going down. So we think RA should be focused on those hours. We also have a weird market aberration where it's required every hour of the day, but we cannot trade it by hour. We have to buy it in large increments. So that means we're over procured. We're spending more money than is actually necessary to meet the regulatory goal. And so we want to change that to hour by hour. It would not be this year in all likelihood because the legislative session ends the first week of September. We have tried to get it in the affordability packages that are being debated in the Senate and Assembly. But failing that, we would likely run our own bill in January.
Thanks for giving me a little bit more information on that. And I would be remiss if I didn't put in my annual plug for bringing back your electric bike incentives. It has been a life-changing experience for me because I took advantage 3 years ago, got my e-bike, carted around my daughter, went to the grocery store today with it. I am so grateful to have that in my life, and I would not have bought it without the 3CE incentives. So please bring it back.
We will run that up the flagpole. And what I think would be helpful if you ever run across data that indicates about what share is of e-bike usage replaces commutes. That's something I've been looking for a while because I wanted to push the same thing with my Board of Supervisors. But I think it would be elegant to get that from the city of San Luis Obispo because I think you may be one of the only councils that has two people, at least two out of the five that primarily only use bicycle for transportation is what I've heard. Maybe three? Well, that's even higher. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wonder for the benefit of the city residents and the whole county, if you could just fill us in a little bit about your office over there on Palm and how is it going and how can the general public utilize the services there?
Well, we do have an office and we are happy to have it right downtown, walking basically across the street from City Hall, which was very handy today. And a block away from the county building. But we also want to be open to the public. The doors are locked, but there are people there most business hours, and especially Wednesdays. If you want to drop by and visit us, that's the time you're going to meet people from different functions. Like many workplaces at this time, we do most employees are on a 2 days remote, 3 days in the office. And we have folks both from our team, the ones that you see, but also from communications, like Judy's based out of there, and from our customer accounts and programs team.
Nice, thank you. And I know that there were some people who were actually getting their bills re-looked at during the office and getting some really good feedback. Vice Mayor.
And
Go ahead.
Mayor Stewart, I did not give the address, but I should. 1042 Palm. So
1026 Palm.
1026
If you want to go there. Vice Mayor Shoresman.
I'm going to take the opportunity to back up Councilmember Francis on her plug for the e-bike incentive. I know that that's a difficult one to implement because there are lots of different types of e-bikes and they're not always used for commuting. But if there's a way to weed out the non-commuting bikes from the commuting bikes and still be able to provide that incentive. We also used the incentive many years ago, and I would venture to guess that our long bike probably has over 100,000 miles on it between commuting our kid back and forth to school before he could ride his own bike and all the grocery trips that have been used for it. So plug for that. An additional one that hasn't come up in a while, but I have heard it circulate a little bit in the past, and I know Air Pollution Control District has done something on this, but the gas-powered leaf blowers, especially for landscaping businesses, it would be wonderful if we could do something small to help incentivize switching to electric for that equipment as well.
Great. I have a little experience with that. We did do a program at the Santa Barbara Air Pollution Control District. So great testimony also on the miles avoided for your family. Thank you, Councilmember.
And if you have a chance to check out Rideshare, they do actually calculate your commute with your e-bike or your e-vehicle. And so hopefully there's a way to connect more with them. And it is something we have to remember to actually log, which sometimes I forget, but it is a helpful tool. And so hopefully that can help get you some data as well. Thank you so much for the presentation. Well, with that, we'll move forward to city business, and we have City Manager McDonald to provide her report.
Thank you very much. I think we're just pulling up some slides here. We have a number of items that we wanted to highlight. I think, as the mayor mentioned, this is our one meeting in July, and then we don't meet again until August. And so we do have a number of things sort of packed into this report that we wanted to share with folks. And then again, we'll see you back here in August. The first is to let everyone know that we've done our State of the City report a little bit differently this year. We've put it together as an actual report document that is available online, as well as a kind of handful of hard copies. It should be really easily readable. There's obviously a QR code up there on the screen. We're pushing it out through social media. It's accessible to everyone, and we hope everyone kind of checks it out. There's a highlight of a lot of the work that we've done and each department has done over the past year. It, of course, is hard for us to distill all of that down into the number of pages that we did, but our staff has done a really amazing job, in particular Natalie Harnett, for putting it together in this complete package. We really hope folks check it out and let us know what you think. Since we're trying it a little differently this year through this document form and making it available online mostly, did you miss something that we may have done in the past? Did you want us, is there something that you wanted to see a little differently? We'd love to hear from everyone, and we'll take it from there and look forward to bringing something forward next year to highlight the work of the city. Next, we wanted to also highlight that folks may be seeing new utility box art out in the community. We're really excited to bring a refresh to a number of our boxes and add some to our inventory. Our staff has done an amazing job of identifying where those are and creating a fun activity for people to get acquainted with our utility box art program and help us celebrate its 15th anniversary. And that is being done through a scavenger hunt. So there's an idea of what that looks like up on the screen here. You can go to slowcity.org/public-art to get an access to the scorecard. It'll tell you how to run through the process and then how to turn in your scorecards, and we will be handing out prizes. Our contest runs from now in July all the way through October, so we hope folks check it out. You're also able to turn on your scorecards at our Parks and Rec office at 1341 Napomo Street. And again, if you have any questions, take a look at our website or call 781-7300. Next, we wanted to let everyone know we're going to be, you're likely to see some smoke and potentially some fire in our city in August, and we want to make sure everyone is aware that this is intentional and controlled. And so it's a really great opportunity between our fire department and CAL FIRE to conduct live fire training in the city. This will occur in August, in the week of August 4th through the 8th, and then between August 11th through the 14th. Each day, normal kind of daytime hours between about 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And this will be happening at 468 Stafford Street. So our staff is, fully ready for this event. We've also been in contact with our Air Pollution Control District, who will be helping to get the word out to folks so they know it is happening and they are aware that this is controlled and intentional. And these trainings are really important for our team and our firefighters, along with CAL FIRE, to make sure that they're able to respond to different types of fires that they might encounter in the community. Of course, they provide us with a realistic emergency experience, skill development, safety training, and offer a chance for just evaluation improvement, as well as some of our other staff, like myself, to get out there and take a look at what it might entail. Don't worry, I will not be actually participating in the fire itself, since that is for professionals. But we wanted to make sure everyone is aware that this is occurring those first couple weeks of August. So feel free, if you happen to be driving by as well, this is the activity that's happening there. Next, we wanted to highlight, we do have a resource fair coming to Silver City Mobile Home Park. So our Office of Sustainability and Natural Resources is partnering with the Silver City Mobile Home Park to provide residents with an opportunity to learn about the benefits of energy efficient home upgrades. It's really on point this evening, both with our 3CE representative as well as our conversation that we're having later this evening. So we're really happy to bring this and highlight it for everyone. This fair will connect attendees with free resources that are offered by local organizations, including the SLO Food Bank, the Air Pollution Control District, our SLO County Public Health, the Diversity Coalition, and CAPSLO. These resources will help people stay comfortable in their homes year-round with efficient supplies. The event will occur on August 28th and is exclusive to Silver City residents. So if you're interested in learning more and maybe bringing a similar event to your neighborhood or your organization, please reach out to Gray Gattero, who's she's here, or they're here in the audience, from our Office of Sustainability and Natural Resources. So we're really excited to bring that forward. We're really grateful to our staff and all of our nonprofit partners who have been helping to bring this to our community. Next, we wanted to highlight a number of new businesses. We get often asked, like, hey, what's going on with new businesses in town? And so we wanted to give a shout out and make people aware. There's a lot of exciting things that are coming forward. So a lot of them you've probably noticed, and if not, here's an opportunity to go check them out. In the last 3 months, 3 new restaurants have opened in San Luis Obispo. This includes Wren Provisions on Broad Street, Honey Belly Korean Barbecue in downtown SLO, and Condesa Cocktails on Monterey Street. New retail options include Brandy Melville and Understory Plant Shop in downtown SLO, Premium Meat Market in our Railroad District, and Singer's Big and Tall relocated here from Santa Barbara. We have new experience-type activities and businesses that include a sauna and cold plunge from California Sauna Club at SLO Ranch Farms Marketplace. And if anybody hasn't been out there in a while, check it out. It's really coming to a lot of life out there. Boxing classes at JLD Boxing Academy in the Bear Valley Center. Muse Markets downtown trade show filled the first floor of our former Ross building this last weekend. So hopefully people were able to go check it out. It was a great opportunity to activate that space. And they brought in new vendors and audiences to the downtown. We're really excited to have that happen. Who knows, maybe we'll have more of that. We have a new culinary startup operating out of the kitchen terminal, Scene Gluten Co. Okay, dear to my heart, since that means it's a gluten-free Mexican bakery pop-up selling pan dulce, galettes, and more, and you'll see me there, basically. So we're really excited to see entrepreneurs choosing to start their businesses and ventures here in San Luis Obispo and bringing gluten-free bakeries to me. We have next just wanted to highlight the items that you'll see coming to council in August. We have a number of items on consent, but really wanted to highlight for our public hearing and business items, we will be completing a plan development overlay removal for 1144 Choro Street. So that's really to accommodate what's happening there with the hot house, which is a change from a prior overlay that was intended to allow a different type of development. We will be discussing administrative citations for street tree removals at a specific location. But our main item will be to discuss updates to our sewer lateral program, which has been, I think, a lot of effort from our staff and discussions with the community and the development community. So we'll be excited to bring that forward for discussion and direction. And then with that, We actually have our last slide here. I'd like to ask our police chief to come forward and talk about a topic that we know is really important and coming up a lot for the community and of concern. And so Chief Scott is here to touch on immigration in our community.
Thank you, Madam City Manager, and good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you for this opportunity to be brief and to speak with you all about a very important topic in our community, and to have this platform to reach out and talk to our community as well. Many communities, just like SLO, are really, struggling and experiencing fear, anger, and anxiety around the current state of federal immigration and immigration policy. Our police department has been working diligently to not only maintain, but continue to build trust with all of our community, especially during what is happening in the national landscape. Not only with just our migrant community, but all of our community, to continue to be a trusted resource for accurate information regarding public safety. We're going to continue to do fair and equitable policing, just as we always have, and to go about this work in an unbiased way without discrimination, always. We never ask a person's immigration status. That is not fundamental to the work that we do. It's not important to the work that we do. And so our goal is to make sure that all of our community members are safe, regardless of however they got here. That's not relevant to our work. Our police department works closely with our California state offices. We certainly follow all California law. SB 54 closely governs what local police can do in this activity, which is essentially nothing. We have no formal role in immigration enforcement. A collection of different laws that support this, the Truth, Trust, and Values Act, dictate exactly what we are not to do, and that's not to share information with federal officers regarding information. It's not to share our resources or provide any type of detention services for those that may be under an investigation for immigration. We don't conduct checkpoints. I know that's another question that we'll commonly get. If there's checkpoints in our city, that's not something that we have a role in. And again, just no form of detention. I just want to be very clear about that with our community. We'll always respond to any call for service. And so if a community member sees something that's concerning or threatened, or if their personal safety is threatened or that of another, call the police. Our goal is de-escalation first, and go out and see what the situation is and provide real information to our community that we're able to. This also includes activity from other officers operating in our jurisdiction. So if somebody sees what they believe to be a police officer or a federal agent, they don't know, they could be wearing a mask, call the police. We have the ability to come out, we can talk to them, we can't impede their operation, but we can certainly ask questions, and by law, they're required to also inform us of who they are and what their activities are. And so we're happy to always perform that service for anybody that has a question about something they see occurring in our community or happening to them personally. And finally, just want to express my appreciation to the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We've been working with Matt Pennon and his team, Greg Herman, a couple months now in providing this information up on our city's website. We've now also copied that information over to the police department's website. I encourage everybody to visit. It has a very defined list of what the police can and cannot do, and we want to make sure all of our community has the same information. And also a big thanks to our city attorney's office and Christine Dietrich and her staff for providing great information to our officers. They're highly trained. We stay on top of this so that we can always respond as accurately and as helpful as we can for our community. And finally, just a final message to, again, our community. Just if you see something, anything concerning, don't be hesitant to call us out there. We want to be that conduit to provide good information and safety for everyone. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. If not, you can always follow up by email or refer your constituents.
Thank you so much. And I know that in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, they have some information about the Rapid Response Network. Do you have that on yours as well, or where should people go for that information about Know Your Rights and what to do?
I believe that information is up on the DEI's website, so I would encourage people to go there, because there's other things that you can get engaged in that may be outside of the department that the city is focused on. And so I really encourage people to stop there first, and if you need more granular information, please come on over to the PD and we'll help. We're also working very closely with UndocuSport. There's an immigration coalition that's formed under UndocuSport. We're working very closely with them to exchange information.
Thank you. And so last question, with the, if a loved one, friend, et cetera, is taken, detained, the information about the portal and where to find your loved one, is that information on the county immigration page or on our page?
I'm not particularly sure. I can certainly follow up with you on that question. I know it does not live on our page, so I'd be more inclined to refer them over possibly to the county or, yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Anything else, City Manager? Okay, thank you, and thank you for bringing up the state of the city as well. This is the first time ever doing that all digitally, so that's a interesting, different experience. I'm so curious as to how many more or less people will be seeing that report based on it being completely digital. So if you wish to know more about the 24 to 25 year and some highlights, definitely check it out. With that, I know the chief said it, but I just want to highlight it again. I feel a little bit, as I look around our state, like we're kind of in a bad DC or Marvel movie, and there's vigilantes masked all over. I was in doing interviews on Wednesday for our statewide board meeting, and our statewide board, I should say, for the cities, and we were interviewing. Sorry, my computer just died. We were interviewing someone for the board, and at that moment, all of a sudden, there was someone coming into their city, and they were having to stop the interview because they had to go take care of what was happening with ICE. So we're really trying to figure out how do we best prepare ourselves here, because we know that these ICE visits will be, I think, on a regular basis throughout California. And we just want to be as best prepared as possible to help, of course, comply, but also to make sure we provide the resources necessary that can help people. So thank you so much, Chief. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you to the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and a big thank you to Chelsea Ruiz and others from UndocuSupport and the Immigration Coalition. With that, we have a public comment period for items that are not on the agenda. So if you have a public comment for items that are not on the agenda, make sure that you have the city clerk has your slip, and we'll go from there. City clerk?
I have none.
All right, moving forward. So now we have the consent agenda, and these are for items that are considered non-controversial. Anything that you would like to pull away from the consent agenda? Nope. Okay. I just want to make sure I turn anyone who is listening or watching today that there is an agenda correspondence about the Downtown Association. So go ahead and check that out if you'd like. It's a great kind of a review of what the city is giving to, or what the city is doing to help keep the downtown clean and safe, and all of the additional resources we've been providing to the downtown since quite a few years now. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda item, City Clerk?
No, we do not.
All right, so with that, do we have a motion? Vice Mayor.
Yeah, just want to call attention to a large, even though they are non-controversial and none of them are getting pulled, there's a large number of really meaty, important things on the consent agenda. So thanks to all the staff and everybody who worked on those, and super happy to see all of them moving forward. And I will go ahead and move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Marks.
I'd like to second it, and I also wanted to commend all the work that's been done on the DEI high impact grant funding priorities and information. It's just a small item on our consent agenda, but it represents hours and hours of really important thought, and I'm encouraged that there is a focus on city residents and on events taking place within our city. So with that, I'll second the motion.
Great, thank you. And I just want to highlight a couple other items too before we go into voting. Really appreciate that we're continuing to do the work on La Loma Adobe. History is so important, and I'm really thankful that our team's able to work with the Friends of La Loma Adobe. And then the police department grant applications. I get asked a lot about the ABC and what we're doing with tobacco, what we're doing with alcohol and underage drinking, and as far as the flavored vaping and tobacco. So I just want to say thank you so much to the chief and his team for continuing to work on that as well. With that, can we have the roll call?
Vice Mayor Shorsman,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Francis,
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell,
Yes.
Mayor Stewart.
Yes, and the motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much. So first off, we will move to the study session, which is the Climate Action Existing Building Energy Retrofit Policy Update and Future Options Study session. If you have public comment on this item, make sure you turn in your slip to the city clerk so that after the presentation and questions, we can do that. With us, we have excuse me, with us we have Bob Hill and Chris Reed, and they'll be presenting the report. Or Greg Herman.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Just a couple brief comments, and then I promise to turn it over to the team. We're happy to be here tonight to talk about the progress that we've made so far and some of the recommended next steps as it relates to emissions from our existing buildings. This is a really important evening for us because we've always known that making progress in this area in particular was going to be one of the most challenging aspects of implementing our climate action plan. And that's simply because it requires some level of change or modification to what's already in place, either in folks' homes or in different buildings throughout the city. But we also know is that it's one of the most important parts of our climate action plan. So emissions from existing buildings make up 30% of our community-wide emissions, and our stated goal on this topic is to cut that in half in 5 years. The good news is that we are on the road and that we have put policies and programs in place to begin to advance the city towards that goal and objective. And tonight, you're going to hear some recommendations that I think build upon what our lessons learned have been in this space. They allow us to sustain progress in areas where we're already taking action, and importantly, they move into new policy areas that we have yet to take action in, but are going to be an important component in us being able to achieve what our goals ultimately are. I'm very grateful to be joined by both Bob Hill and Chris Reed to take us through our presentation tonight, and I'm happy to hand it over to Chris.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Herman, and good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm Chris Reed, Sustainability Manager. I'm joined tonight by Bob Hill, our Sustainability and Natural Resources Official. This study session really reflects a lot of hard work done by folks across our agency and across our community. So a special thanks to Greg Godero, our Green Buildings Analyst, who really did the bulk of the sort of analytic work that underpins this. Staff's recommendation is to receive and file a presentation on building energy retrofit policy progress and future options, and provide strategic direction on next steps. Staff has identified 6 recommended next steps, referred to as strategic next steps in the Council Agenda Report. Those occur across 3 policy topic areas. Staff also has provided multiple alternatives for each of those policy areas, and we'll be discussing all of that in greater detail later in the presentation. But first, we'll start with a brief bit of background. Tonight's item is grounded in general plan policy and the city's climate action plan, where council has an adopted goal of carbon neutrality by 2035 and a sector-specific sub-goal to cut emissions from existing buildings in half by 2030. This existing building's energy goal is achieved through membership in Central Coast Community Energy, as Mr. Williams and his team mentioned earlier, as they progress towards 100% carbon-free renewable electricity, and by focusing on reducing natural gas use in existing buildings via energy efficiency upgrades, including efficient electric appliances like heat pump HVAC systems and water heaters, and building upgrades like insulation, new windows, air sealing, and on-site solar and battery energy storage. In support of achieving the city's existing buildings energy emissions reduction goals, staff held a study session in December of 2023 to identify policy options available to the city and to receive strategic direction on next steps. As described in that report, staff's research yielded 4 key findings. First, that voluntary actions via incentives and rebates would not be sufficient to achieve council's goals. Second, that there are specific solutions that can be tailored to the wide variety of buildings and occupants in our community. That most of the emissions from building energy come from heating water and heating spaces. And that there are a limited number of times when major decisions about building systems are made, and that it is likely necessary to have a policy for each of those triggering events. At that 2023 study session, Council provided strategic direction to pursue a pragmatic policy framework that starts small, that covers each building sector, and that takes action on what is feasible in each of the 3 identified policy areas, which are 1, requirements for energy efficiency improvements concurrent with major additions and alterations, 2, the development of an energy efficient requirements for large buildings, typically referred to as a building performance standard or BPS, and 3, requirements for energy disclosure or improvements at time of sale. Progress to date on each policy, including potential next steps, is provided later in this presentation. So in addition to the specific learnings we've made in each policy area, we've also learned about overall progress to our targets and have had a wide range of conversations with stakeholders in our community. So first we'll just start with that overall progress. And there's 2 charts on this slide, and they both show natural gas consumption, the unit being therms, which is the unit of natural gas, over time. The chart on the left includes gas use for all building types from 2012 to 2024 and has 3 lines. The solid blue line there is the total gas consumption in any given year. The dotted light blue line is the linear trend over time, and the dashed green line represents the 50% reduction from 2016 levels, or our 2030 targets. The figure on the left shows a 10% reduction over that time frame, which is real progress given that those reductions happen concurrent with the period of relative growth of new buildings in our community. However, the figure also illustrates that we are not on track to achieve our 2030 goal. The figure on the right narrows down to just residential data and shows 2020 to 2024. The addition here is the orange dot in the upper right, and this represents our best estimate of where natural gas consumption would have been had we not engaged in our local policy or had state policy not been completed, and had we not also pursued voluntary reduction programs. So the story here is the same, incremental reductions despite new development, but unfortunately not on track to achieve council's goals. We also spent the last 18 months talking with community members, community organizations, technical experts, and program administrators. And in the community, tonight's study session builds on several years of concerted building energy education and outreach events, including the Green and Healthy Homes Roundtable and a community informational session that we held in May. We presented to leadership at and received feedback from the SLO Climate Coalition, the SLO Chamber of Commerce, and the Association of Realtors. And we interviewed technical experts across a wide range of programs and jurisdictions, everyone from folks at the National Renewable Energy Laboratories and Department of Energy to staffers at small cities, and then folks that sort of sit across the entire spectrum of design, architecture, construction, building operations and maintenance, building transaction professionals. So everyone that touches the life of a building, we essentially spoke with as we prepared for this study session. I'll also note here that the outreach mentioned in this study session, it doesn't include the numerous events that we also have been hosting in support of voluntary retrofits. And just one example of that was the event that we'll be hosting in collaboration with our community partners at Silver City that City Manager McDonald mentioned earlier in her report. All right, so we'll transition next to each of the 3 policy area we'll transition next to each of the 3 policy option areas. We're going to talk about additions and alterations, building performance standards, and time of sale policies. And we'll start with energy efficient renovations. And for each of these sections, just like in the council agenda report, we'll first have a slide that just talks about what this policy is sort of conceptually. Then we'll talk about our progress since 2023. We'll then talk about or present staff's recommended strategic next steps and then present some alternatives to those next steps. So starting with energy efficient renovations, policy description. So an energy efficient renovation applies when a property owner undertakes a significant building project, such as adding new conditioned space or substantially modifying existing conditioned space. A policy like this can apply to single family, multifamily, non-residential buildings. They require applicants to include specific energy efficiency upgrades in their existing buildings. So the idea is that you might have an upgrade that has its own energy requirements, but this will extend those requirements to the rest of the building. Some policies also have requirements for projects to provide electrical conduit, wiring, and outlets for future electric appliances. And compliance is verified through plan review and field inspection. And importantly, it's codified as a local amendment to the California Energy Code, which means this policy must be cost effective and reduce energy use relative to the base code. In 2023, Council provided strategic direction to develop a major additions and alterations policy. This was adopted by your council on May 21st, 2024. And in our policy, it applies to single family homes that have additions and or alterations that are 500 square feet or larger. This has been in effect or enforced since January 1 of this year, and we have a number of permits in the pipeline. We've issued one that is subject to this policy, and based on historical permit data, we'd expect there to be about 10 by the end of the year. And interestingly, the one permit that was issued, compliance occurred via installation of the electric heat pump HVAC system. And in talking with both folks on the design side and the delivery side, these are actually becoming quite common as sort of the standard HVAC system. And so that was sort of a surprise learning for us. We have now been implementing this new policy for 6 months, so we found pretty immediately an opportunity for improvement. And that is really around the definition of work area. So how do we identify what are we talking about when we say 500 square feet? What is the definition that we use to say this is in or out of that 500 square foot total? And the work area has a phrase in it, reconfigured spaces in it, that is not defined and has therefore led to a bit of ambiguity that's both taking plan checkers more time and also leaving some of the projects we think might have complied or been subject to this policy out of compliance. And so we're recommending that we, if council is to direct us to return with an updated policy, that we also receive direction to update this definition for clarity, and we provided a draft definition in the council agenda report. One other note on energy efficient renovations, right as this staff report was about to post, the California legislature passed AB 130. Now the stated intent here is to increase housing production through CEQA reform, but there was a little piece put in about building code, and the law essentially precludes cities from adopting local amendments to the California Energy Code, which is exactly what this policy does. Fortunately, there is an exemption in place that allows cities with certain types of general plan policies and certain types of greenhouse gas emission reduction strategies in place to continue to move forward. And so our initial assessment is that staff's recommendations in this report and in this presentation are consistent and should be allowed to move forward, but we are continuing to monitor this and we'll continue to learn more as we learn more. So this brings us to our first two recommendations. Included in the report is strategic next step number 1 and 2. So first, readopt the energy efficient renovations requirement for single family homes and do this concurrent with the 2025 California Building Code, which we'll be bringing to your council this fall. With the definition for work area revised for clarity, and this would essentially keep the existing policy framework in place. And then number 2 is pending the release of the cost effectiveness studies by the California statewide energy codes and standard teams for multifamily and non-residential building types, further evaluate the viability of a policy that would apply to those building sectors, so expanding beyond single family buildings. And if feasible, return with that policy to council for consideration in 2026. Now it's important to note here that the evaluation of viability and exploration of feasibility could include having an additional step where we come back to council for a study session to sort of vet some options. Staff has provided a number of alternatives in this policy area, and the first two focus on changing applicability thresholds and compliance measures. And this is related to the existing single-family additions and alterations policy. And then the third and fourth alternatives are options just to direct us to sort of cease work on one or more areas of this policy space. All right, and that takes us to Building Performance Standards, or BPS for short. A building performance standard sets minimum energy or emissions targets for existing large buildings requiring compliance over time. In a BPS, building owners are required to track, report, and improve building performance through operational changes, equipment upgrades, and/or verified energy supply changes. And these are typically administratively resource intensive. Large cities have full teams dedicated to these types of programs, and smaller communities typically have 1 to 2 dedicated staff members, along with technical consultants to support. Though resource intensive to implement, a BPS program is one of the most direct and scalable tools for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And by scalable here, we mean that the policy can apply to 25,000 square feet, it can apply to 10,000 square feet, it can have really restrictive reduction requirements, it can have less restrictive reduction requirements. So kind of a wide range of what that could look like. Since 2023, the work we've done here has been really focused around a Department of Energy grant application that was like a thesis report. Staff worked with the City of Santa Barbara staff, learned all the nuances of a BPS, and completed some of the initial technical work, learnings, and then also completed a number of stakeholder interviews and worked with organizations like 3C Ren and community-based organizations to understand not just what would it mean for the city to implement this, but do we have the sort of organizational capacity across multiple partners for this to be successful. Over that time period, the state has also signaled interest in pursuing a statewide BPS program. And so the California Energy Commission is currently drafting a letter to the legislature so they can consider that in a future legislative session. And just last year, we worked with the City of Santa Barbara to also submit a joint letter sharing our best recommendations for how a state program could help local governments achieve their emissions reduction targets in a way that are aligned with our community values. All right, so this brings us to our next 3 staff recommendations, which are to continue to monitor funding sources for implementation of a BPS program, while also using existing staff resources to complete foundational tasks, such as refining and finalizing the database of potentially covered buildings, evaluating non-residential cost-effectiveness studies to identify retrofit measures, conducting extensive outreach with building owners and stakeholders, and connecting building owners with voluntary retrofit programs. As part of this recommendation, this would also include returning with the BPS progress update to your council by early 2027. And this is really sort of a no regret set of actions, whether we find funding to implement a BPS over time or we stay strictly with a voluntary sort of technical support program for large building owners. These are all tasks we would want to do to have that be really successful either way. So it's focusing on that in the near term. Recommendation here, strategic next step number 4 is to continue to monitor and provide feedback to the statewide BPS program. And number 5 is to continue to advocate to the Central Coast Community Energy, 3C Ren, state agencies, and other relevant organizations for expanded non-residential retrofit rebates and incentives. You'll notice the 3CE program, there wasn't an icon for that, and we're working to advocate for there to be an icon for that in next year's presentation. There's a number of next steps, there's a number of alternative next steps provided in the council agenda report. The first one is really to work on BPS tasks above and beyond those foundational tasks. So sort of to work, like you might say, at risk, hoping that we'll find the funding to launch a full BPS, doing some of those specific BPS related tasks like developing the BPS ordinance, developing a compliance framework, even starting maybe to collect some of the building data that we could then figure out how to host securely and safely. Those things are substantial time investments and would require a reallocation of existing committed time and resources in the 25-27 Climate Action Major City Goal. And the other alternative here is just to cease work on the BPS technical work. Our final policy area is time of sale. And we talked earlier about how there's a number of trigger points when people make large investments in their buildings, and time of sale is certainly one of those points. So As far as policy description goes, time of sale policies support or require disclosure of a building's energy performance and/or require specific energy efficiency upgrades when a property is transferred from one owner to another. This policy aligns upgrades with when investments in properties commonly or sort of naturally occur. Effective implementation requires coordination with real estate professionals, permitting staff, and local utilities or rebate programs. And because time of sale requirements operate outside the permit stream, they can actually complement some of the other retrofit policies we're considering. Out of the 2023 study session, we heard from council to move forward with all these policies, but this was sort of on the lowest end of the priority spectrum. And immediately after that, and speaking with stakeholders, there were some concerns, particularly from the realty community. And so staff pivoted to evaluating the potential for a voluntary disclosure program. And in early 2024, we learned that the California Public Utilities Commission had approved a statewide pilot to expand the previously Bay Area only focused Home Energy Score program, which is administered by BayREN, which is the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. The Home Energy Score program provides a score for a home based on its energy use. It provides a report explaining that score and then connecting the building owner to recommended upgrades. The program also hosts the sort of digital infrastructure necessary to generate the report. And then it also provides trainings for inspectors to use the program and subsidizes the cost to conduct the evaluation. In the Bay Area, the subsidy for an inspector that's already going out to a home typically covers the entire cost to do the work, plus overhead for the inspector to make it worth their time. Importantly, in the city of Berkeley, where there's a mandatory disclosure requirement at time of sale, BayREN does not subsidize the reports in that area, with the idea being that they don't want to spend public dollars for regulatory compliance. So that is something to consider, that if we were to move into a mandatory disclosure program, we would benefit from the program, but not from the subsidy for the reports. And through our work with BayREN, we're in a pole position to be one of the first pilot communities for this statewide program. That brings us to our last recommendation, strategic next step number 6, and that's to participate in a voluntary home energy score pilot and report to council in early 2027 on the outcomes of the first year of the pilot to inform further action. Through this recommendation, staff would facilitate the identification and referral of inspectors for the home energy score training, which would be hosted and funded by BayREN, and we'd collaboratively work with realtors to understand how to best deploy the voluntary energy disclosure system. Staff has provided several alternatives here, and the first two would be to expand beyond staff's recommendation to include the development of a disclosure requirements and a renovation requirement, respectively. And both of these alternatives would likely require the reallocation of staff and resources committed to in the 25-27 Climate Action Major City Goal. The other alternative here is to cease work on one or all parts of this policy area. All right, we'll conclude with next steps and questions for council. The table here provides a next step schedule should council direct staff to pursue the 6 strategic next steps identified as staff's recommendation. So for the energy efficient renovations piece, the existing policy would be updated this fall and presented to council for adoption in October of 2025. Be concurrent with the 2025 building code adoption, which I believe is on the agenda forecast for the second meeting in October. Any additional policies for energy efficient renovations, so for non-residential and for multifamily, would be developed later this year through 2026 and brought back after a full policy development process. That could include an additional study session if needed. The BPS work would begin immediately, and we would expect that to conclude in fall of 26 so that we could summarize it and be ready to present it in a study session in early 27. And then the home energy score work would be further developed this fall in partnership with BayREN and would be formally launched early next year. This takes us to the end of our presentation, and we're prepared to dig into any of the particular policy areas. But at the highest level, our key questions are, does council want to provide strategic direction consistent with staff's recommendations? And if not, what alternatives would council like staff to consider? Additionally, are there any other policy options or programs that council would like staff to further explore? This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. The one question I couldn't find in the report or in your presentation is, what are the trade-offs? So it was shared, for the BPS, it'll take a significant amount of time for staff, and so existing staff, to work on this newer project. So what would be the things you'd be taking off of the table to be able to make this happen?
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Those are great questions, and those were real alternatives. So we've put a little bit of thought into what some of those trade-offs would look like. So we've been discussing at large. We're in a constrained environment and not anticipating additional resources in our office, to be sure. And I think it depends on the kind of thing that we're talking about. So just to give a couple of examples, and first I want to say a few of the alternatives require a little bit of wait and see. So for example, if we are interested in the statewide process around building performance standard, we want to wait and see that cost effectiveness study, especially since we know that here we're talking about multifamily properties and where we're going to have a larger propensity for renters and things like that. So we want to be able to really zoom in on some of those sensitivities, or how it might affect a building tenant improvement in a commercial building. So those are a couple of things where it's wait and see. So if directed to pursue those things, we still need a little time to see how those things shake out. Another example would be to understand how funding environment looks like for certain things. That being said, if, for example, one trade-off, as Chris was mentioning, we might want to be a little bit more aggressive with time of sale requirements, with a mandatory requirement for disclosure. We could do that, and that might capture a few more people in the pool. On the other hand, sounds like we wouldn't be able to benefit from the funding and support from BayREN, which not only is like the whole platform and the software and the training, but also the underwriting of the inspector. And in our outreach, we spoke to a couple of building inspectors at the recommendations of others, and they were like, yeah, absolutely. If you pay us to do it, we want to do that. And that's just, I'm already going out to that property to do it. So I think that the trade-off there would be, it would take a little bit more of our staff time, but also there's some other elements involved with it. A really big one, though, probably here is around the building performance standard. And as Chris mentioned, because we worked on a Department of Energy, a federal grant, together with City of Santa Barbara, we already have developed a level of technical capacity and understanding of what it takes to pull off a program like this. And as mentioned, they're scalable. But it's a big effort, and it could take, for a small scale city like ours, it could take up to, the better part of a full-time staff person there. So when we look at our work program, there's a variety of different things. One thing coming up that's a signature element in our Major City Goal work program is to update the Climate Action Plan, for example. And our Climate Action Plan, when we originally adopted, we wanted to return and update every 4 years and do a comprehensive greenhouse gas inventory every 4 years. This would be one of the last opportunities we have to make any major retooling or changes to the Climate Action Plan before we set ourselves into that final trajectory towards 2035. However, this type of a trade-off might ask ourselves, well, we already know that regional vehicle mile trips and buildings are the biggest sources of emissions. Why not just really focus in on emission and do those things? So I think a big sort of somewhat provocative trade-off here would be that we don't do a climate action plan, or we do a very limited version of one and just provide a memo and a greenhouse gas inventory update, which forgoes the community engagement process, which Chris reminds me all the time, that actually is the work, is getting out there and talking to people, not producing the report, right? So trade-offs are never easy. I don't want to leave council in the position where it's like, well, those aren't really trade-offs, but we have some options that we can take.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Well, this was an incredible staff report, I have to say. I read it several times, and it's very comprehensive. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the alternatives as well. My question is about the time of sale issue. So let's just say we had a homeowner who on their own initiative, put in the HVAC, put a power, battery backup and EV charger, did all that, and now wants to sell the house. Is there will they get credit for what is already done in the concept? I mean, the concept is you're imagining that the house is has 0 energy improvements. What about a seller who's already done those things? Could they just be exempted? Or what would the plan be? Or would you would the city try to scoot around and say, oh, well, what else can we make them do? That wouldn't be good. So what would happen?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And the time of sale policy framework sort of exists along, like all these things, along a continuum, where on the most restrictive, we would establish a right-sized program for San Luis Obispo that would require a retrofit at time of sale. And likely the retrofit wouldn't occur at time of sale, but there'd be a commitment to make the retrofit within the first couple of years after the sale. We have analogs in the state of California. Actually, the only analog right now is the city of Berkeley. And how they deal with that specific issue is that that you need to go to you need to install any number of energy efficiency measures or electric heat pump, HVAC, or water heater. But if you've already installed any of those, then you're good. Like, you've already complied with the rules. It's very similar to our additions and alterations policy that we already have on the books, where if you can illustrate compliance, like reducing our emissions from our buildings is the policy objective. And if someone has done that, there's no reason to require additional. So I'll just note that that's how another city has developed that. In the middle, there's a requirement for disclosure. And then what staff's recommending is a optional disclosure, basically bringing the platform that folks that at time of sale that want to participate in that can, they'll get a score. It'll reflect all that energy work they've done. So instead of getting a 2 out of 10, they might get an 8 out of 10. And that might be a really great sales point. Or it might, as you're buying it, as you're saying, hey, I got a 2 out of 10 on this. We love this house. It's right for us. But I know that there's going to be some changes I want to make to my property. And I have these access to incentives and rebates to do so. That's also sort of a nice resource. So I guess just to sum up, staff's recommendation is sort of outside of your question. We're really recommending the voluntary disclosure. And if we were to develop a required disclosure program or a required retrofit program, that would undergo a full public sort of policy development process, and certainly the intent would be fair, reasonable, and in line with council's values and objectives.
Yeah, me personally, I think voluntary sounds good. But one of the concerns that I have about a requirement at the time of sale would be that it could raise the price of housing, which are already way too high. I mean, they're way out of reach for the average earner in our county and our city. So just assuming that there would be, because the place is being sold, that the money would be there to do these upgrades, I don't think that's, how do I say, just practically speaking, I'm not sure about that being something that the city should get into, doing anything that would make it more expensive for someone to buy a house. So has that been, I suppose the realtors brought that up at some point, or what's your feedback about that?
Yes, the realtors brought that up, and it's also a concern that we have as well. When we look at, again, in the city of Berkeley is the one that's passed this, and we spoke with their staff at length about how they thought about these concerns, and they have a number of exemptions. So there's edge cases where, if only we had $3,000 more, we could have gotten to that house. If that's $5,000, $3,000 after incentives and rebates to install a heat pump hot water heater was the way we could have gotten in, but darn it, that shut us out. They have a number of exemptions in place to make sure those edge cases aren't preventing those real estate transactions from happening. In fact, they fully exempt them in most cases. But for those transactions that are on $2 million homes, $3 million homes, folks' second homes, like all those kinds of things are firm, like that's the more common real estate transaction in that jurisdiction where they were developing their policy. And so that's how they formed that. And so if we were to receive direction to develop a policy for City of San Luis Obispo, those are the exact kind of considerations we want to make sure we design for.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just add on to that real quick? So if you have an as-is sale and we had the voluntary program, it still would end up with the number, but not necessarily have to make the change because it's an as-is sale and it's a voluntary program. But if we changed the ordinance in the future and made it required, an as-is sale, really sure you get a great deal potentially, but you would have to then make the building changes we are requiring.
Depending on council's direction for what a requirement program would be, it could just be a disclosure program where you say
Okay.
you have to complete the home energy score process at time of listing maybe, and then you know if it's a 2 or a 6 or a 7. And so it sort of depends on where council would like us to move.
Got it. Thank you so much. Vice Mayor.
Thanks. Can I drill down on that just a little bit more? So with a voluntary program, basically those who maybe have done improvements on their homes would probably want to get the home energy score done and hire an inspector to do it, who would then maybe get reimbursed for the cost of doing that inspection by BayREN or whatever the incentive program is. And so what you would have is you would probably have a market where sellers that hadn't done any improvements wouldn't have the energy scores done. And then you would have homes where improvements have been done would have the scores. And so you'd have sort of an uneven level of information for buyers, but it would probably make those homes look better to a buyer who was more interested in those types of improvements in their homes and being more electrified. It would give those buyers more information about the homes that were electrified and maybe incentivize that purchase a little bit more. Am I kind of understanding this right?
Yes, I think so. And I think that's definitely would be a common case where somebody's already done the improvements and they want to show that they've done it and make that a sales feature. I think on the other hand, a buyer who's very price sensitive, maybe they're going to go for their maximum mortgage that they're eligible for, and they want to know if they're going to get hit with a $500 utility bill, which might just put them over. So that's the kind of learning that where a buyer might want to initiate that inspection and report as well.
Okay, so in a voluntary program, the buyer could initiate it or the seller, or it could be agreed upon maybe in the negotiation. It doesn't happen at one end or the other of the purchasing. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. With regard to BPS programs, for those of us who haven't done all the research that you all have done, it doesn't maybe seem like it would be that resource intensive to create a program. Could you kind of explain a little bit why that's such a resource intensive endeavor that requires teams in other cities and more intensive work?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And it does seem pretty straightforward. And in fact, some cities have just adopted a building performance standard ordinance, said, we're just going to tell our buildings to perform at this standard. That should be pretty straightforward. And then they got into the administrative side and said, oh, this is actually quite complicated. And where the time-intensive complications come in is so first identifying all the eligible buildings. So say we set a threshold at 25,000 square feet. Say that's 200 buildings. The initial thing we need to do is to benchmark, understand where all those buildings' current energy performance are. So we look through the assessor's parcel data, but actually 80% of those have something slightly unusual about them. So now we need to actually go out to each of those buildings to verify basic things like square footage. We need to identify the kind of mechanical equipment that's on those spaces. We need to find who the owners are. Oh, actually, the owners aren't responding to any letters and they're in Minnesota. And so now we need to have staff that are following up. And so in the building performance standard, you'll have like a compliance timeframe for benchmarking that by Jan 1, 27, you have to have uploaded your energy data. And so you have 200 plus building owners, maybe less because multiple local people own buildings, but for the sake of this, that you're working with to upload. And then, okay, only 150 have uploaded. And so now you have 50 that are non-compliant. And so now you need to decide on enforcement. Are we going to just be nice and hope they comply? Is there some kind of penalty associated with that? And now you're enforcing on the penalty, similar to like a code enforcement. And that's just for benchmarking. And so then once you get into actually enforcing on the reduction in energy standards and being able to show those reductions over time, and that the improvements that were committed to and the compliance forms were actually verified on site, and are they performing as they said they would, et cetera. Just through one building that's time intensive and across a portfolio of 200, just takes really sophisticated data analytics, data management that really requires third-party vendors to help with. And it's just really time intensive to manage the relationships. And that's nothing to speak of the other side. You know, we always hear carrots and sticks, right? And we really want a robust carrot environment if this is something we wanted to pursue, where there was deep technical assistance to help folks understand how to share their data, understand how to get good quotes or bids to improve their buildings consistent with the standard that we've set for them.
Okay, the way you describe it makes it sound a little more overwhelming, so I can appreciate that. Would we have to go down the route of creating a BPS program in order to try and move the needle a little bit on multifamily, or, and what does that look like if not?
I'll just note that our work to date has really focused on single family homes. There's been all the resources are there, the tax credits were there, everything was there. So we really focused pretty narrowly on there, and then on mobile manufactured homes, because again, we had resources to focus in on there. So there's actually a really fertile space to support non-residential and multifamily building owners in making retrofits. There are some, like 3C Ren just launched their commercial program that applies to these building types. So for the first time, there's sort of an enduring financial tool to help folks make improvements to their buildings. And we know that large buildings are typically managed like capital assets, whereas like our homes, I mean, most people don't manage their own homes like capital assets, even if they want to. But these large buildings have standard maintenance cycles. You know, as part of their rents, they're collecting the set aside for that major piece of equipment replacement. And if we can, our theory here is that if we can come in, develop, or even not develop, but build on the really great relationships we have with local building owners to be able to say, hey, we know we expect you have maintenance needs. Here's a resource to come on the side. Can we leverage that to help you achieve your objectives while also achieving our community's objectives? And we think there will be some ground there. And in fact, I've already heard from one of the sort of prominent heat pump installers of the Central Coast that generally large building owners do like for like replacements, not surprising there, but there have been a couple instances in the very near past where folks have said, actually, we want a heat pump HVAC system on our rooftop because we don't want to manage two systems. We're willing to pay extra. And so if we can help them not have to pay extra or only a little bit more extra, we think that there could be space there. And I'll say staff's recommendation here allows us to pursue that while also leaving ourselves open to, if there's state funding or other funding sources for BPS, to leverage that work to be successful in that space.
Great. Okay, just one last question about the, oh, yes.
Sorry, thank you, Vice Mayor. It's a really, really important question. And if you look at the staff recommendations under the additions and alterations policy, it talks about what Chris is describing, which is that, and it's dependent though upon the results of cost effectiveness studies, because any policy that we would need to bring forward in this area would need to meet that criteria. Those aren't out yet, so we need to see that. But presuming that there are cost-effective approaches, it would be a way of expanding what we're doing for single-family residential units right now to the multifamily and non-residential or commercial space. So that would be catching folks at time of a large addition or a remodel or a major modification to the building, to put some criteria in there to encourage them to opt in to some more energy efficient choices. The building performance standard is a time certain way of getting those changes in place. And so it would have the greatest sort of return on investment in terms of making sure that we could across the board ensure all building owners of a certain type are making those improvements over time and would make more dramatic progress towards our goals. But there's other ways of continuing progress, and that's a part of what we're recommending tonight as well.
So it would probably increase our likelihood of meeting our very ambitious goals because we could do more quicker in a time certain way. But there's ways of getting there with some of the other recommendations.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, last but not least, on the local amendments to the building code and potential changes to what we're doing already, it makes a lot of sense to change the definition of work area and reconfigured spaces, because it seems like that's caused problems, and so clarification is in order there. But I wonder about the number of applications that we could get per year if we tweaked some of the other requirements. Do we, for example, the 500 square foot guideline that we have in place right now, or requirement that we have in place right now, do we see that a change to that number would dramatically increase the number of additions that we would get or alterations that we would get that would be covered by our current code if we tweaked some of those areas around the edges that are mentioned as some alternatives?
It's a great question. It's one we've really wrestled with, as we have only 6 months of data, and there's so many things that go into the additions alterations market, interest rates, weather. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons people will or won't do that, right? When we look at the permits that came in, the 400 square foot threshold gets us like a couple more. We don't know for sure how they'll move through, but we would guess between like 2 in a slow year, 5 in a big year. So it's not like there's a set of like 60 retrofits available if we were just to shift down slightly. It's this large project, this large type of addition alteration just doesn't occur very frequently.
And what about ADUs? I know there was a suggestion about that. Would you be talking about attached ADUs or separate ADUs, and what would that mean?
Yeah, so separate ADUs are entirely different structures. This is like in a very narrow instance where there is a ADU inside the building, and the idea would be like we could evaluate the viability and legality of counting the square footage of that unit towards the overall project. Right now, we say anything that creates a new unit is exempt from that 500 square foot total. And so this would, direction to reevaluate that would say, hey, look at the possibility of including, say you have a garage, like 2 bedrooms converted into a unit, and addition and alteration elsewhere, and all that total 500 square feet, that unit would contribute to triggering improvements on the main property. And so the direction to do that would tell us to look into that space.
Okay. I'm not sure I totally
That was a
understand.
terrible example. If I could have a redo, I would greatly appreciate it.
Can you please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Garage conversion into a standalone unit. If that was a 500 square foot conversion, as of right now, doesn't matter how big or small it is, because it's creating a new unit and we're not counting it towards compliance with this policy. In a universe where that is a viable thing to do, to count towards compliance with this policy, 500 square foot new unit in the garage would then also trigger the retrofit requirements in the main building.
Okay, so given the small amount of data that we have now, how would that change our numbers if we were to,
Yeah,
do you know?
I think it roughly doubles it, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, that was a super clunky question, and asking you to kind of read between the lines and the tea leaves and be a fortune teller, but thank you.
Councilmember Boswell.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Good question, Vice Mayor Shoresman. It'd probably be nice in January if we could get a memo update on what number did we actually hit for our first year of the program. That'd be interesting to see. Just a few questions. The first one, just back to the BPS. So, of course, we're oftentimes kind of ahead of what the state is doing in terms of energy, because often we feel the state is lagging on that. But this, with the BPS, this seems like a situation we might want to, continue on the path that we're on and that you're recommending. Because it sounds like there's things afoot at the state and then also potentially with the RENs as well, with the energy networks. I mean, is that a sense of the case that the state might help us solve this problem, maybe even in a way that would be faster than if we just sort of struck out on our own at this point? Is that what I kind of heard you saying when you were talking about the state's potential program?
Yeah, thank you, Council Member. I think it was the last legislative session, the law passed directing the California Energy Commission to develop recommendations and then share it back to the legislature, who will then decide whether or not they'll pass a law directing the development of a program, which will then go through sort of the regulatory or administrative development process before being rolled out. So it is a long timeline. Like I don't want to misconstrue it that it's about to drop in the next year or so. We're talking, I would guess, 3 to 5 years. That said, the statewide program done well would have some of this shared digital infrastructure. Our advocacy in our shared letter to the CEC docket was around developing a program just like the energy code, where locals could have additional applicability. They could make local amendments essentially to it to achieve their climate programs, and that was well received on the Energy Commission staff. Now, how that gets played through the legislature and into future development, we just don't know.
On the home energy score pilot program, so the step we're taking, kind of this small step that's being recommended towards a voluntary program, this wouldn't somehow exclude continuing to develop that program if you wanted to move towards required disclosure, for example.
No. In fact, if there was a direction to develop a required program, our recommendation would be to start with the voluntary accesses platform, assess its usefulness and viability as a first step anyway. So one of you see in the staff recommendation, sort of a direction to evaluate the first year and then return for additional direction. And so there are a wide range of options and off-ramps. If it's not working in their direction, there's a way to say no thank you and move on.
Councilmember Boswell, I want to make sure I understood your question. Were you asking, does staff have the capacity to do all 3 of the recommended actions in each of the 3 policy areas, or did I mishear you?
No, it was just, this first step that we're going to take, I mean, it sounds like it's consistent with, as Chris said, if we wanted to move ahead at some point in the future with a required disclosure, that the work we've done on the voluntary disclosure supports that, as opposed to it's a different path to the required.
That's correct. Okay. And same with our primary recommendation around BPS, where we're ostensibly saying we're going to build the scaffolding around what a program would look like and develop the database and the intelligence that we need.
One last clarification on that. I just want to clarify from a comment earlier that the BayREN program, there's sort of certain funding. So they work on, I think it's 7-year funding windows, and they have guaranteed funding for 2 to 3 years and then projected funding for 7 years. And we would expect the sort of voluntary nature of that to extend through the full 7 years, and then hope it would get re-upped over time and would have it indefinitely. The one thing that would happen if we moved to a mandatory disclosure program, we'd still have access to the report and the infrastructure and the trainings. It would just be the subsidy to pay for the report that would go away.
This BayREN pilot program, the score that it generates, is this score, can it be then, does it help a homeowner potentially directly apply for grants or rebates or things of that nature?
The home energy score report template we've seen has QR codes. So it sort of says, hey, the best thing that you could do right now would be to have a heat pump hot water heater installed if you're interested in emissions reductions. That's your sort of best bet. And there's a QR code to the BayREN program that links them to rebates, incentives, and technical assistance. And so the idea of the program is it does connect people directly to those grant resources or those rebate incentive resources.
I know in the past there's been programs the state has had where you had to have some sort of home energy evaluation. So is that still the case? So would this provide homeowners access to some programs that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get? Is that still the case, or has that changed?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, thank you. Incredible questions from all my colleagues. I think you've covered everything I have. I just have one quick follow-up. You had mentioned that we are waiting on the cost effectiveness study and in order to decide, what elements are worthwhile or what we're able to implement. And I was wondering if we already have an analysis in place of kind of what the thresholds are that we'd be waiting to see from the state. And I think I worded that in a really weird way, but essentially, do we know what we're looking for in that cost effectiveness study? And that would be kind of our green light.
Thank you, Councilmember. It's a really hard question to answer because the large multifamily non-residential buildings are just so different in nature than single family buildings. But we do know, we have seen some screenshots of some of the studies, maybe clandestinely brought to us, that show sort of, they're really focusing on if you replace a rooftop package unit, which might include a gas furnace and an electric air conditioner with a rooftop heat pump unit that has the same sort of heating and cooling capacity, does the energy savings involved with that pay for itself over the time? So those are the kinds of questions that the study is asking, and then it'll be through our policy development process to say, and what kind of non-residential additions or alterations rise to the level where that's an appropriate expectation or requirement to place on that permit or on that transaction, such that the idea with the single family additions and alterations is that you're already doing a 500 square foot project, you're spending likely over $100,000. Heat pump hot water heaters is such a small piece to bring you into sort of compliance with the city's policy objectives. So we'd look for that same thing, and there's lots of questions. There's so many different types of occupancies. There's so many different types of non-residential buildings. We certainly wouldn't want a policy that slowed down a tenant improvement substantially and hurt business retention or acquisition. So there's just a lot of considerations that we would need to look into as we develop that public policy.
So kind of too many variables to get ahead of that report and really kind of see what comes out of that. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you, colleagues, for the questions, and thank you for the answers so far. We're going to go on a quick little pause here for about 5 minutes, go on a bio break, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. All right, thank you for the quick break. Coming back to, we had our questions. Now it's time for public comment for the Climate Action Existing Building Energy Retrofit Policy Update and Future Options Study Session.
Okay, we have 3 public speakers. First one is Laura Albers, then Rachel Whalen, and then Jen Fields.
I can't believe you went on break right before I spoke, seriously. Good evening, Mayor Stewart and council members. My name is Laura Albers. I am the Executive Director of SLO Climate Coalition and current San Luis Obispo resident. I'm here tonight to express our strong support for the policy recommendations in the existing building energy retrofit study session. The goals that this council has set, cutting building emissions in half by 2030 and achieving community-wide carbon neutrality by 2035, are both necessary and urgent. We urge you to direct staff not only to adopt the measures presented today, but to return within 12 to 18 months with implementation outcomes and recommendations for refinement. This kind of feedback loop is essential to assure we're staying on track. On the additions and alteration policy, we support readoption with clarified definitions, but we also urge the council to keep future options open, such as lowering thresholds, including ADUs, or using project cost as a trigger. We want to gather real-world data to ensure the policy evolves with both equity and effectiveness in mind. We're also fully supportive of the city's continued work on large building performance standards. This is one of the most scalable strategies available, and we encourage you to stay focused on implementation. Lastly, we're especially excited to collaborate with the city on the BayREN Home Energy Score pilot. SLO Climate Coalition is ready to integrate this tool into our home energy advising service immediately, offering at no cost to hundreds of local residents, or households at least, and led by our home energy advising manager, Carlos Hernandez, who is here with me tonight as well. This is a powerful way to give residents the insight they need to make smart energy decisions. This is a pivotal moment to move from plans to progress. Please adopt these recommendations with a clear mandate. Implement, evaluate, and adjust as needed. As always, SLO Climate Coalition is proud to partner with you in advancing climate action in San Luis Obispo, and thank you for your leadership all.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and council members. I'm Rachel Whalen, the Governmental Affairs Coordinator at the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, I want to express our board's support for the city's proposed energy efficiency retrofit policy. We commend the city's ongoing leadership in advancing sustainability and appreciate the thoughtful, phased approach being taken to help our community meet the climate challenge. As the policy moves forward, we offer the following recommendations to strengthen its implementation and ensure it's effective and accessible for all. First is improving data collection. Exploring opportunities to collect more detailed data on local energy usage will support more targeted programming and allow for meaningful progress tracking. Second is expanding education efforts. We encourage you to increase the number of educational touchpoints with residents and businesses to continue broad outreach to raise general awareness around energy savings. These education efforts will help familiarize our community with the resources available to them and give residents more understanding as to why these updates are necessary. Third is streamlining the process. Ensuring the permitting process is clear, user-friendly, and accessible will reduce barriers and encourage a widespread participation. And lastly is celebrating successes. Recognizing those who meet or exceed climate goals by offering visual markers such as stickers or signage will allow businesses to proudly display and show their environmental commitment. We also understand that as you work to further meet the city's climate goals, the policy framework will likely expand to include larger non-residential properties in the future. We believe we could provide a helpful perspective by facilitating dialogue between the city and businesses before taking that next step. We look forward to remaining an active partner as the policy evolves. We appreciate the city's continued partnership with the business community as we work together toward a more energy efficient and climate resilient San Luis Obispo. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Stewart and City Council members. My name is Jen Fields, and I am a renter in SLO and will likely continue to be a renter in SLO throughout my time here. And I just wanted to note that I really appreciate the city investing in retrofitting buildings to reduce carbon emissions. That is really important to reaching our climate goals and bettering the city for future generations. I did just want to bring attention that through retrofitting buildings, especially rental buildings, this could lead to unforeseen rent evictions, so evictions from renovations. And the city of LA recently protected their tenants from rent evictions. Also because of a decarbonization policy happening in the city of LA. So I encourage the city of SLO to look more into that to understand the balance between retrofitting buildings for a green economy and a green future, but also protecting the tenants and people that live here in the city as well, since we are a majority rental city. And the city of LA and a lot of organizational groups have great information about what their policy is looking into, and I can send along more information on any reports that I have for that. But just wanted to bring that into attention of balancing both equitable people living here and also equitable green economy. Thank you.
Thank you. And also thank you for being willing to serve on the HRC. We're happy to include you in our consent agenda today. Thank you. Any other public comment?
No, that is our final speaker.
Okay, and with that, we'll come back to anything, Bob or Chris, you would like to add, or any other questions that came up for the council from what we just heard? Well, did you have anything you wanted to add before we get to the questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of notes. First, the innovation the Climate Coalition mentioned around maybe leveraging the Barron program for a non-time of sale use was an interesting surprise to us. It just shows that when we create these systems, there's lots of innovation that can occur that can bring unexpected solutions to the community. I'll note that regarding the SLO chamber, their staff and I spoke, and we're really looking forward to we really appreciate the offer to have that convening and hold that space for convening, and we'll take that. We'll take them up on that and look forward to those conversations, and really look to our Green Business Network to be the venue or the avenue through which we celebrate business success. And if there's any more informal ways we can do that, whether it's through social media or some other kind of events, would love to explore that further. And then finally, regarding the rental issue and evictions as a result of renovations, I'll follow up with a community member and receive those resources. This is one of those, this is why we would want to do a full policy development process through next year as we get into multifamily buildings, because we see our climate action not as a standalone goal, but as really deeply intertwined with housing, diversity, equity, inclusion, and economic development. And we can't solve one if we're not solving them all. So.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes, thanks for the chance to respond. We also heard and appreciate the comments from all three commenters. I just wanted to state, as far as the comment about increasing the conversations and the demonstration fairs and getting out there in the community, I just wanted to remind everybody in the room that in our Major City Goal Work Program, we committed to doing one of those types of things quarterly. So it's July now, and so we have one due in the next 3 months, right? And thereafter. There'll be different themes, of course, but we have a lot of that going on. And then as far as celebrating success, that was particularly got me thinking a little bit. And right now we have a partnership with EcoSLO around the Green Business Program. And that's one of the things is you get a certified SLO green business, and we'll have some conversations about synergies there as well.
Thank you so much. I love that idea from the sticker. I mean, I think Greg and I were talking earlier about the adopt or the Star Energy on your dishwasher or whatever appliance, but that might be a bit much if it was on your house. So, Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. I really do appreciate all of the comments, and I just wanted to focus a little bit on the renter, talking about the renovation eviction danger that's out there. But there's another aspect that I'd like to just bring up, and that is we have a lot of older houses that are in really bad shape. And if you have something like windows that don't really keep the wind out, or roofs that are leaky, or let a lot of air in, or if you have a situation where the condition of the house itself necessitates the use of more energy. Let's just say you have to have the heater on really high because the house isn't really designed to keep the cold out, this kind of thing. So I just want to just sort of hope, I want to say I do support all of the staff recommendations, but I also hope that we're looking at the possibility that some of these houses need something much more basic than an HVAC. And with the whole rental housing inspection program, which ended up becoming politicized, I would hope that there'd be a way that what staff is proposing today can avoid any kind of sort of backlash, especially from corporate landowners, landlords, and people who are really not interested in providing housing as an amenity or a utility, but are looking at it as a commodity. And they're really pretty ruthless, some of these people. So I just want to sort of put that out there as a thought in terms of how we are going to proceed in all this. So like I said, I really do appreciate all of these staff recommendations, and hope that staff doesn't get overburdened to the point that they have to work on the weekends or whatever, but I mean, just monitoring the activity itself so that it all fits into your work plans is really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Vice Mayor Schwarzman.
Did you want to say something first? Okay, I was going to ask staff if they could put up the questions that they had in case there's anything in particular that we really need to address. Thank you. I ask you to put up the questions, and then I'm going to basically say that I support staff recommendations. Although I do want to echo your comments about appreciating the public speakers that, especially those from organizations that are helping to contribute to our work and making sure that we get all the voices heard and offer opportunities for voices to be heard, and potentially, in the case of the Climate Coalition, help implement some of these activities, especially in regard to the time of service voluntary program. So appreciate all that and definitely want to call it out. And I know staff will take advantage of those opportunities as they've been offered. I am, again, like I started to say, I am largely in favor of staff's recommendations as much as I would like to support a quicker movement on the building performance standards, especially your clarifying information that you provided during the question period. I now understand a little bit more why it would be such a heavy lift, and I appreciate the mayor's question about what the trade-offs would be, because I had that question as well. While there's a piece of me that wants to just push ahead and maybe not do a complete climate action plan revision if that was the trade-off in order to get us closer to the goal quicker, I see the amount of work that it would entail and know that we don't have a lot of resources in order to put to it. But if we were able to find some resources, it's definitely disappointing that we weren't able to secure that grant that you all were working on. But if something comes up, I know you'll keep your eye on it, and hopefully something like that will materialize that will help us move forward quicker. The one thing that I wanted to kind of, I guess, take the temperature of the rest of my colleagues about is with regard to the local amendments to the 25 California Building Code and the idea of including attached ADU square footage in the compliance threshold. That's one thing that I think I wondered about when we had our initial discussions about the building code amendments, and could see that if you're converting a piece of your existing property, that adding some energy efficiency could improve conditions for the whole building. So, and if it really is true, I know your data was sort of back of the napkin guess on how much it would increase the number of units that would qualify. If it really is close to double or even more, that seems significant. So, I mean, I'm definitely torn on this. I see the impact that it would be to somebody who is changing their home to make that change of use. But I'm curious if anybody else is interested in that idea as well.
Can you clarify, so are you saying only if someone is adding onto their home or retrofitting onto their home or within their home versus an ADU?
Maybe I should look to staff to explain what that meant a little bit more.
The idea here would be that if someone was converting a part of their or either existing conditioned space or their garage into a dwelling unit, should that square footage, that dwelling unit count towards applicability here? And I think what that would look like if we were to receive council direction to evaluate that is as we're developing the policy, as we move towards the second meeting in October, we could look at the legality of that. There's, constant new state housing law we'd have to evaluate. We could look at the sort of financial implications of that and come back to council with that policy proposal as well as the standard policy proposal.
So it wouldn't necessarily mean that we would definitely go forward with something like that. It would be an extra, relatively minor, I'm assuming, change to the evaluation process. Correct?
The technical side from the energy code perspective would be relatively minor. I might look to our community development director or others as far as evaluating the legal implications.
Hi, Timmy Tway, Director of Community Development. One thing we'd want to do is look at whether or not this conflicts with state law regarding ADUs. As you all know, the state is very concerned about anything that we potentially could do to inhibit the ability for someone to create an ADU. So that's absolutely something we would explore to make sure we're not running afoul of state law.
That's exactly what I was concerned with. Thank you. City Attorney, anything to add? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think my general question is to all of you of whether or not that's something that you'd be interested or curious to explore as well.
Got it. Thank you. Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, thank you so much for the entire program that you've been working so hard on. I am really concerned about the distance between the progress that we've made and then the ambitious goals that we have. That line is moving in the right direction, but it's moving really, really slowly. And I understand that we've added a lot of housing and these are all great things, but I'm hoping we can find more levers to pull here. I'd love to see the building performance standard program kind of ramp up more intensely, but I know the reality of our budget constrained year is we're just not in a place that we can do that right now. So for now, I'll just say I'm in favor of staff recommendations. I would jump on Vice Mayor Shorsman's addition of the attached ADUs within the constraints of state law. Love to do a little more research on there, add a few more units every year that get some retrofits. That would be great. And just kind of jumping on some of the public comments, I really loved the idea of the public display of successes just as kind of an advertising measure, and also just, people feel kind of chuffed when they do this. So for individuals, for businesses, I think it'd be great if we had little decals or signs just to celebrate those successes. I thought that was a great idea. And also, loved the idea of you coming back to us in 12 to 18 months, just give us an update and see if there's things that we could be doing bigger, better, faster, more. Of course, being incredibly mindful. I was so grateful to our commenter coming up and talking about the rent eviction reality. And I know we're having a more comprehensive discussion about this in October. So perhaps whatever comes out of that, we can have a program in place that's more comprehensively addresses those concerns. But if we move forward with anything that would potentially, force renovations that then would result in rent evictions, I really want us to get ahead of that and make sure we have the protections in place before we do that. And I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. I definitely agree. I'm concerned around the rent evictions. We saw a lot of that during the pandemic, and I don't want to see that us being the cause of that. That would be very much a concern. For Mr. Reed has heard me talk about this ad nauseum. So I think as far as the additions and alterations, if we're able to help the entire property be at a better homeowner scoring, sorry, I just want to make sure I say this right, for the work that they're doing on whether it's an attached or non-attached ADU, I think that's a good idea personally, because it's someone taking the time to think about how can I make my property more efficient, more reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and whatever that takes, I think, is what we're looking for. So every little bit. But yes, of course, staying within the appropriate ADU requirements from the state. As far as the getting ahead of the state as a whole, I think I struggle with that because we've gone through that a couple times and it hasn't gone great. So really trying to think about if we're setting up the scaffolding and the voluntary aspect, I think that's the carrot versus the stick, which I'm usually a big fan of. I also think that voluntary and pilot helps us be able to get kind of that renew and analysis you just talked about in the beginning of this entire presentation, which was, hey, that one part didn't work well. So we can look at that, we can make the changes. So when we get to the point that we're talking about potential mandatory, then we've done all of this work. And by that point, the state might even be on track before us. So I think that's something to kind of think about. And then as far as the multifamily and non-residential buildings, I think non-residential, I heard already, we have a lot of people who are willing to help be partners in that. I'm game on looking at that a little bit faster. Multifamily, I'm beginning to be a little concerned about this also being another cost increase for renters, because people continue to come to us with, hey, let's make sure we stop all smoking in multifamily. Let's make sure they're all green. Let's make sure, when they're not really in charge of their own place. So that concerns me a little bit about how do we look at multifamily and what does that look like? So I personally would want more information on that before trying to say that I would be supportive or not of the policy. In concept, yeah, I'm supportive, but in reality, I'm very concerned. As far as the available staff time, I'm also a little concerned because, as we've all kind of already stated, when going through the budget, we saw that there's a lot of work to be already done, and so I get worried about the trade-offs. I want you here for a long time, and so, and I'm very proud of the work that your office does. So I think that as we talk about the trade-offs, I think we keep talking about it. As you said, there's not really a crystal ball. And so as we start to realize, oh, this is a much bigger problem than we thought, or, oh, we can keep moving along with the practices we're seeing in other communities, I think staying open to that and hearing what you have to say is kind of where I'm at right now. Trading off for little community engagement for the community action plan does not sound exciting to me. I forget the exact saying, but we can't move forward in leadership faster than our community can absorb the changes. So I want to make sure that we're keeping everyone, keeping the majority of people involved and that want to be. Of course, always advocating for rebates and incentives, residential and non-residential, of course. That's what makes us be able to do this work faster and better and more voluntary, quite honestly. Participating in the home energy score pilot, yes, I think that's a fantastic idea. I love the fact that with the voluntary, we can have some better support from BayREN. So that was much more exciting to me than let's move this to mandatory and have not as much help from BayREN or as much money opportunities from BayREN. That seems like a bad idea. So I think I answered all the questions. Let me know if I didn't. Otherwise, I'll pass it on to Councilmember Boswell.
Thank you. I'll be supporting staff's recommendations tonight. I did want to ask a clarification from Vice Mayor Shoresman regarding the ADUs. Is this to direct staff to investigate whether we could potentially apply this to ADUs and then bring back that information to council?
Yes, essentially, it would be one of the things that we would want, that we would direct them to look at in addition to what the basic recommendations were that they were making, to extend that energy code to attached ADUs if it would allow through state law.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. It's probably something we should know the answer to So, yeah, so I'd support that addition to the recommendations. And then, the other thing I wanted to say is, we're in the situation now, we're 10 years out from our carbon neutral goal. We've done most of the easy stuff, right? So now the challenges are getting more difficult. Not only that, when you begin to look at the authorities and the tools that local government has, they're less clear, they're more difficult to deploy on some of these problems as well. And so, and in my opinion, this is a situation where, the state has its emissions reductions goals, and we're getting to the point where if the state is expecting local government, and they do, because in their what's called their scoping plan, essentially the state climate action plan, does put responsibility on local government. The state's going to have to give us some more tools and resources to be able to do this, because we've done the easy stuff, right? And we've used the tools that they have given us to do a lot of that stuff. And now we're running into situations where, you can hear it in some of that discussion tonight, like, can we do this, or how do we structure this program in a way? And we even see in some cases some retrenchment from the state, like the current legislation that just passed a few weeks ago that will restrict, hopefully not us, but it will restrict other communities in the state from being able to, extend their building codes to do some of the kinds of things that we're doing. So the notion of continuing to advocate to the state, continue to communicate to the state to not only for resources, but also to give us the legal capacity to do some additional work that needs to be done. The only way we're going to, our two big challenges in SLO are building retrofits and regional transportation. And those are very, very difficult to solve on our own. We're going to need help. And I appreciate the Climate Coalition talking about the opportunity for partnership on the home energy assessments. Those kinds of partnerships are going to be necessary, and continued cooperation with the state. So thank you staff for doing a lot of work on what is becoming an increasingly challenging problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Marks.
Yes, just briefly, I agree with everything that's been said, and if we want to look into the ADU question before taking action on it, I think it makes sense. In terms of updating the climate action plan that is before us, I don't want to see that abandoned completely, but I do think that it would be possible to do an update that's more or less surgical, and looking at the data, looking at what we already know, and doing some kind of amendment to it. Maybe not a full-blown update with, all the community meetings and everything that we usually would do, but just saying, wait a second, this has got to be, the climate action plan has got to reflect the current status of what we're doing, because once it starts getting out of date, it's useless. So I just would like to throw out that idea. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone's comments and input. Being this is a study session, my question is, do you have any more questions for us? I think there's one, but you have to press the button.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask one point of clarification. What I think I heard is that the council would like us to research the question on the inclusion of ADUs as a part of our additions and alterations, come back to council and receive policy direction if you all would like that included in the readoption of our existing program.
Can I suggest something? I think instead of coming back to council, I think a memo would be helpful, because it seemed as though we're pretty on board as long as the memo says we're along with state law and this can be included, FYI. I'll just leave that to my colleagues. Vice Mayor?
I was just going to suggest or ask if that could be done at the same time that it comes back to us, that you're already planning to come back, just as like an alternative, or the suggestion that the mayor made, either one.
Sure, I think we can do that. I just wanted to understand if the council wanted us to come back on that specific question before November, when we would come before you for adoption of the building code. So we'll either transmit that information separately to you via memo or otherwise include it as an option when we present the building code for adoption in November.
That sounds good. Thank you. Unless we have a free meeting that you just want to come and meet extra about. Just kidding.
I think that's a no.
I think that's a no. All right, perfect. So I think that is sufficient. Thank you for that question. Appreciate it. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you so much. Oh, nope, there's one more question. If the button's not pressed, I don't know.
You're right. Apologies, Mayor. The last question I had is there's specific direction in each of the policy areas for returning for either study session or other follow-up. And then I also heard separately a suggestion that we should come back sort of like an omnibus update in 12 to 18 months. I was just looking for clarification on that.
So with the 12 to 18 months, it seems as though to put that date on it right now, I leave that to you because you're kind of coming back to us and telling us some time limits that make sense or not. I hope that's okay with council.
And just thinking through the forward-looking schedule, regardless of how broad the climate action plan is, that puts us right in that timeline. And so perhaps we can fold the sort of comprehensive update on the work across policy topic areas into whatever study session update we have with council on the CAP.
That sounds like a fabulous plan. Very efficient government work. Well, with that, I will say thank you very much to Mr. Reed and Mr. Hill, and we will take an official 10-minute break. Thank you so much, and we'll come back to talk about the ad hoc committee for City Council for the collaboration with staff to prepare responses to the grand jury report of Round and Round in Town and Gown. All right, well, thank you so much. We're going to get back. Sorry, we're going to get back to the meeting. Next up is 8A. We're going to appoint or potentially appoint an ad hoc committee of the City Council to collaborate with staff to prepare our responses to the grand jury's report. And I believe, who will be first? City Manager.
Thank you very much. I do have just a few slides here kind of summarizing the information that's in the staff report, but happy to answer any other questions that you might have. So first, just wanted to provide a little bit of background. First, obviously, we're here to talk about a report that the grand jury issued on June 23rd after an investigation that was conducted in response to a complaint or two. It's not clear for us in terms of that background for them, but they were evaluating complaints brought by residents concerning unauthorized street parties and noise disturbances kind of near the Cal Poly campus. The city participated in a number of interviews with the grand jury, provided quite a lot of information and documents in response to requests, and then ultimately the grand jury issued a report. There's a few dates up here in terms of some of the back and forth we had with the grand jury after they provided us with a copy of the report before publishing it. You will find attached to the staff report a list of factual concerns that we provided to the grand jury just prior to them issuing the report publicly on June 23rd. We've also provided some of the information that was contained in that attachment in the staff report itself, just to provide a little bit more background in terms of the city's work on this issue over the years leading up to today. Thank you for that. Next slide. Just a little bit of background too on the legal requirements for our response. We do have 90 days from the date of issuance to submit formal responses back to the grand jury. They directed a number of recommendations to specific bodies within the city. So 4 of their recommendations were directed to the city council, 3 to the city manager, and 1 to the planning commission. And so the Planning Commission will be considering their potential response and draft response to the recommendation directed to them at the end of August. I will be preparing proposed responses to the 3 recommendations directed to the city manager. And then there are those 4 other recommendations that we'll be speaking to just briefly about next steps on that as well that were directed to the city council. There were also 6 findings included in the report, but again, the steps that we are required to take are responding to the recommendations themselves. Going back a little bit, the staff report and some of the material in the attachment that we provided include a bit of the history of the city's work on some of the issues raised in the grand jury report itself. Obviously, we've been very connected with our neighboring university for many, many years, and issues related to students, a large number of students living in our neighborhoods is not new to the city at this point. And so we've spent a lot of time over the years really working through issues that have flared up, just I think kind of naturally related to that combination of folks living in close proximity to each other. And so a lot of the steps are listed here in terms of what the city has done over the past 15 plus years to help address some of those issues. Neighborhood wellness or livability has been a major city goal for many years in the past as well. We saw it sort of really get, at least the city, we took a number of steps. It was not then included as a major city goal for years, but we've added it back in now in our current set of major city goals. And we have a couple of work plan items related to neighborhood livability that's really intended to address a number of the issues that are raised in the grand jury report over the next year. And so we look forward to those conversations and really a lot of the commitment that we have already made to continue this work. That is kind of the culmination of kind of going back in time, looking at things like our party registration program, MOU with Cal Poly and their police department to allow for citation authorization off campus, updating our unruly gathering ordinance, our safety enhancement zone ordinance that has been adopted and then updated a couple of times to help address conduct that we've seen changing over time, and enhanced noise ordinance provisions as well, and then all the way going back to the social host ordinance in 2009. So we just wanted to highlight that there has been a number of work items that we've done over the years to help address this, and we have more coming as well. We also, of course, wanted to highlight a lot of the work that was done this past year to help address the St. Patrick's Day related street events that had been held in the past. Our police chief did make a report to the city council really as part of a city manager report after that event to help highlight what had occurred there, in addition to presentation made to the council in combination with Cal Poly on our plans leading up to that. Really, it was a huge work effort put together in close coordination with the university and a large amount of support through our police department in preparing a plan that was incredibly successful and led to a very small number of arrests, no reported property damage, and really from our standpoint, it was highly successful and safe overall. And so we just wanted to highlight that while the report does talk about unauthorized street parties, really, I think because there were a lot of concerns about what might happen with the St. Patrick's Day related events in the city, we had a huge amount of work well underway and a commitment to addressing this in a safe manner with a goal of ending the event over time. As we stated really clearly that the goal is to end it, but just recognizing it's going to take us some years to get to that point. Given the nature of the event being really organic and involving a large number of students who decide to essentially walk down a street and show up at some point in time. And so it really took a lot of work, and we are continuing to be committed to that work along with the university to get to that goal of ending the event. All of that to say, again, getting to the next slide here, next steps for the report itself. Our recommendation is to form an ad hoc committee of 2 council members to work with staff to develop the responses to the grand jury's recommendations that are directed at the city council. I, of course, will be preparing responses to those findings directed at the city manager, which I will also bring forward to you all to review and give me direction on as well. And so we look forward to that process. There's I think probably a few different ways that the city's response could take shape and look like. And so we would be looking forward to working with that ad hoc committee to prepare what that would be on behalf of the council, and then bringing that back on September 2nd. We do have a requirement. Again, the 90-day timeframe is, it ends on September 23rd, I believe, or 22nd, which the Friday before is September 19th. So we want to make sure that we have those responses completed and ready to turn back into the grand jury by that point. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and kind of go from there.
One quick question. I believe in the desire to have a response as quick as possible, we chose September 2nd. However, if we were to wait until September 16th, it still is in the 90-day period, and some students could be back, which might be helpful in giving back their 2 cents into this conversation. Is that something that we would need to be open to in the whole council to push that back to the 16th, or is that not give you enough time to finish up from our final decision at the meeting on the 16th?
Part of our concern was also just managing our agendas in the month, but I believe that we may have time based on the movement of one of our items that we think we might need to push out a little farther. And so if the direction is that we wait until the 16th to bring it back, then that should be fine. I think the fact that we have 2 council members helping us through that helps assure us that we're not going to be way off course and have to dramatically change the ultimate report that we send back. So,
Thank you. Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, just a quick process question. Am I understanding correctly that once we deliver, kind of the legal obligation is that we deliver this back to the grand jury, then it is distributed to the Board of Supervisors, and then is there another legal obligation after that, or is that kind of the end of that piece?
that is the end, and it's really up to, I think, the way that we would be responding. So if we agree with a recommendation and make a commitment to take further steps, then of course we would need to take those additional steps. But at the end of the day, those are really up to the city to carry out. It really concludes the process at that point.
So just looking at the grand jury process itself, that sort of ends at that point.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Shorsman.
Thank you. Yes, 2 questions. I think on your last slide, it said that the ad hoc committee would be responding to the findings and the recommendations. Is that is that, I thought that we're only legally required to respond to the recommendations, but is your recommendation that we respond to both the findings and the recommendations?
I really, we are only required to respond to the recommendations that are directed at us. And so we definitely need to make some response in some way. There's a few different ways that we could go about addressing the rest of the report. We could just respond to the recommendations alone with essentially, I believe the form says, will essentially agree or not agree, or will.
Yeah, under findings and recommendations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a form itself. I wish I had it in front of my eyes so that I could make it clear. And it could be as simple as that it's essentially a form that we fill out and just state whether we're agree or partially agreeing with them. Or we could take the opportunity to provide a lot more feedback and response, and that could include responses to the findings themselves or any other additional information we might want to provide.
Okay, just wanted to get clarity on the scope of the assignment for whoever is on this eventual ad hoc committee. So thank you for that. And then the other question that I had was, it's escaping me right now, so I'm gonna let somebody else go next, and then hopefully it'll come back to me.
Well, the good and bad, there's no other, okay, you got it. All right, perfect.
Just needed to turn off my light and then I would remember. So, now I think I lost it again.
Maybe during deliberations, it will come back to you. Councilmember Marks.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the process. When the grand jury told the city that we should ban leaf blowers, for instance, the city got back and said, we disagree, we won't do that. And the state of California is going to do something like that sometime down the road, and therefore we're going to wait till the state does something. And there was no follow-up. I mean, it's not like the grand jury comes back and says, well, don't you care about leaf blowers, you know? I mean, it's kind of the end of the road. So, yeah, I don't have any questions except, you know, the proposed timeline for this kind of ad hoc activity. Because we're not meeting for a month, and some of us are going far away, so.
We'll come back to that during deliberation. Vice Mayor Shoresman.
Thank you. Sorry for that brain lapse a minute ago. Now I remember what it was. I think just based on some of the emails we got, that there might be a little bit of confusion about why we're appointing an ad hoc committee. I know we probably all understand why, but can you just kind of explain the Brown Act issues and the why the recommendation is to do an ad hoc committee?
Sure, of course. So the finding or the recommendations that are directed at the city council require the entire city council to approve our response. The ad hoc committee recommendation is really to help with both efficiency and to make sure that we're, because staff, we need to help with the preparation of those responses. We could do that behind the scenes and bring you a draft, and then we could have a lot of conversation about it, have to go back, make a bunch of revisions, come back to you all again. This will be more efficient from a time standpoint, especially given the deadline, the 90-day deadline, and then make sure that we are clear and on the right path when we bring that back. And we will bring it back for final approval of the entire council before we send it in. So yes, largely, it's for efficiency's sake, but also from a Brown Act standpoint, a majority of you cannot meet with staff to prepare that response on behalf of the council as a whole. Yep.
Thank you for that clarification. Probably the answer is no, but I just have to ask, can we ask for an extension beyond 90 days since the time period is not ideal?
It is a statutory deadline. They might probably could waive it. We're not certain if they.
I assumed based on the statutory requirements, but I just thought back to timing and people's schedules and trying to figure that out. I want to provide the best opportunity to actually provide a thoughtful and useful and thorough response. So it is what it is, and we'll work with it. Any public comment, City Clerk?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we'll move back forward to deliberations. I think the question that Councilmember Marks asked, I think is really important around the getting something written and done by September 2nd means that we have to have something done, sorry, I don't have the date in front of me, but end of August. So sounds like to me that we have a 6-week time period that we would need to make sure we meet a couple times, whether it's remote or in person, with the ad hoc committee within the next 6 weeks. Is that correct?
I believe so. Right,
Okay.
right.
And are we able to do that remotely as well?
Yes, it's really up to however that works best
Great.
for.
Just making sure that people can work within their schedules too, so. I will say that since I was one of the people interviewed, I would really appreciate being able to be on the ad hoc task force. I've also been working a lot with our university and city leaders on how do we work on not just this issue, but really the town and gown relationship as a whole, whether it comes to purchasing housing in our community with or without our knowledge, whether it's noise violations, whether it's belonging. We've been having a lot of conversations about what does their changes mean and what does that look like for our city. So I think that if it was all right with all of you, I would love to be on that ad hoc committee. Councilmember Marks.
Well, if you read the emails, some of the people who I believe approached the grand jury to raise this issue in the first place want me to be on the ad hoc committee. Now, I can't say that I have a conflict, and so I have to recuse myself, but because I don't live there anymore. I'd be willing to do it, but I'm wondering if having fresh eyes in a way would be more productive. I mean, I'm one of the, my family and I made the decision to leave that neighborhood, and it wasn't entirely because of the parties or, we enjoy the students. There's a whole cluster of factors. When you make a decision to sell your home and move, it's a big deal, and you think about it, and you weigh, and I have to say that, the point at which there weren't very many full-time members left in my neighborhood was then it started feeling like, well, some people stay there till they die, and some people move. What do we want to do? Well, let's move, So, I'm willing to do it, but I'm also aware that my perspective might be, I don't know how useful it would be. I'd like to hear from others. Do you think it would be better in terms of the city's response to have someone who's not actually been in the neighborhood that's been afflicted by this? I have no feelings either way. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to not do it. So.
Good question. We have two other people to respond, and we'll get back to that question. Vice Mayor Shoresman.
Well, I think the community members that voiced their interest in you being on the subcommittee or on the ad hoc committee did so because they think that your perspective adds value. So I could see that perspective. I'm willing to serve on the ad hoc committee, but I can see the value that you would bring. I think, Mayor, you would be great as well. I guess in my head, I had sort of thought of Jan and perhaps Councilmember Boswell, Councilmember Marks and Councilmember Boswell, mostly because of his city and regional planning experience. But I'm open to whatever we all think is the best solution. And I think, we'll all do the piece that we need to do. And there is one of the recommendations that I'm particularly interested in that if we all thought that I should be appointed to the committee, that I am particularly curious about looking into, which is the issue of the student overlay zone that was mentioned in a recommendation 4. And my understanding from the report is that there maybe are some other cities that have universities either in them or adjacent to them that have done something like that. So I'm curious about that and would be interested in digging a little deeper on it. But I'm perfectly fine if any of the 4 of you do that instead of me. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm grateful to everybody who's willing to serve, also willing to serve. But I think there's a lot of really valuable perspective and experience up here that might usurp any desire I have to be on the ad hoc committee. I appreciate your experience on the SCLC being at every single one of those meetings. There's a continuity to that I think would be really useful. And then we were just hearing that Councilmember Marks is about to celebrate 20 years in city service. And that depth of institutional knowledge really, there's nothing that can replace that. That's really incredibly important, though I do take your point with the city and regional planning. I know that Councilmember Boswell probably brings some really interesting perspective from other communities and how they've dealt with similar situations, but perhaps when it comes back to council again, we can kind of bring in whatever piece is missing from there and add it into the report. So I actually would defer to any one of the three of you, I think, as bringing maybe the most to the table.
Thank you. Councilmember Boswell.
Thank you. I would be happy to serve, but I do think there's a lot of value, first in the mayor being in this position. It's a high profile issue. It's a grand jury report. And, we look to the mayor for leadership, particularly on challenging issues like this. So I think it's appropriate. Plus you've been very connected through the student SCLC. And then council, it's been said, right? I mean, I do think there's value in some lived experience with being in the neighborhoods. I think you'll bring a perspective that will be helpful in this case. I lived in student neighborhood for a while, but it was only a short time. Yeah.
Vice Mayor.
Well, with that, I'm willing to make a motion if we're ready to appoint Mayor Erica A. Stewart and Councilmember Marks to the ad hoc committee. But if there's anybody else that wants to comment further, we can do that first.
Thank you. We've got two more. Councilmember Marks. Hold on one second. There we go.
Oh. Yeah, I'm definitely willing to serve. I'm just going to be out of the country from July 30th to August 14th. So, and the other thing I wanted to say is I know I am willing to serve, but as I said, there are many factors that go into that kind of decision. So I think that's a perspective that needs to be brought out. And also, Cal Poly is, I won't even call it the elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. They don't have jurisdiction over Cal Poly, so that's why they can't bring them before the grand jury. It's my understanding 20% of the Cal Poly students are in a fraternity or sorority. And yet, so there's the other 80% it's the 20% that's causing this issue to bubble up. And then Cuesta students don't have any sororities or fraternities at all. And look at all those students. So what we're talking about is a really small minority of students who are causing an outsized problem. So I'll second the motion if did somebody make a motion? Okay, already.
When it comes time, I'll call on both of you. City Manager.
Thank you. I realized that I misspoke in referring to the requirements of the responses themselves. So looking at this form that's shown on the screen, which is kind of hard to see, but it came with the report itself from the grand jury, and it does require us to respond to the findings in some way. So either we state we agree with the findings or disagree wholly or partially, and then providing an explanation. And then the recommendations, there are sections that there are choices, either explaining that the recommendation has been implemented, it has not been implemented but will be in the future, that it requires further analysis, or it will not be implemented because they are not warranted or not reasonable, and then we are requested to provide an explanation for each of those. So we would use this as a kind of bare minimum kind of guide for us in our preparation of our responses. So I just wanted to make it clear that I misspoke when I explained that exactly what we were required to provide. So I want to make sure I corrected that.
Also on page 238 of the packet, or page 18 of the grand jury report, it goes into the 933.05 findings and recommendations, which goes a little bit more into depth beyond that form. So I think when we respond, as long as we're responding to both the recommendations and the findings, which is what it says in the motion, we should be okay. Thank you. All right, well, so with that, Vice Mayor.
I would move that we appoint Mayor Stewart and Councilmember Marks to the ad hoc committee to respond to the grand jury report.
Thank you. Councilmember Boswell.
Second.
Can we have roll call?
Vice Mayor Shorsman?
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Councilmember Marks, for being willing to serve with me. I appreciate it. And
Well, I always enjoy working with you, so.
we talked about getting coffee, so this will be perfect.
No, I would like a copy of that form, if you could email it to me, because I didn't see that. I saw the recommendations. That's the first time I've seen the form, so it'll be useful.
Great, thank you so much.
So maybe we can establish the timeline and all that offline. We don't have to do that during this.
Perfect, yeah. We'll connect with the city clerk and city manager and find some times at work.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you all. So now we go to the last item on our agenda, which is appointing the 2026 Council Compensation Committee. We will make appointments to the Council Compensation Committee effective immediately and sunsetting upon presentation of its recommendations to the City Council. I'll pass this over to Deputy City Manager Greg Herman and City Clerk Teresa Purrington.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We're happy to be here tonight. Teresa and I are going to be tag teaming this conversation. And it's also helpful because Teresa and I led the Council Compensation Committee the last time that we did this 6 years ago. And I think it was a pretty fun time for everybody involved. And so we'll be looking to support the group again in the future.
And we're not answering our voting slates yet, right?
Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
Just a brief presentation. So the recommendation for tonight is to make appointments to the Council Compensation Committee effective immediately and sunsetting upon presentation of its recommendation to the City Council. We currently have that planned for March of 2026, next year, just for reference. We want to briefly go over the policy context, just so everyone is aware. But the idea is that the compensation is reviewed by NLE in even-numbered years. The idea behind that, as you're aware, is that it ensures that an election occurs before changes go into effect. The second piece is our council policies and procedures. It states that the committee shall review the full compensation package, which includes salary, benefits, expense reimbursement, and professional development. However, just for note, and the council is aware that recent changes have really just focused on the salary piece of the equation for council compensation, and that includes the most recent change related to the CPI increase that council can elect to take. The Council of Policy and Procedures also note that we should do some research in terms of what is going on at other similar cities in order to form a recommendation, and so we lead the group through that effort. That looks at compensation of council and mayors in cities of similar population. We have comparison cities that we use for our compensation studies that we do through our Human Resources Department, and oftentimes that's a place that we look to first to understand similar cities and the approach that they have. We look at charter and general law cities and government code provisions specific to general law cities. We, of course, don't have to abide by those provisions. However, they have a more strict set of regulations as it pertains to council compensation that's tied directly to population. And so it's just a data point to take into consideration on behalf of the committee. And then the last piece is just looking at the responsibilities, and oftentimes this looks at the amount of time invested, both in terms of the mayor and council members, and we accomplish that through a survey of the council. The final piece of context is a resolution from 2014 that states that when we look at council compensation, we also look at compensation for the Planning Commission and Architectural Review Commission, who don't receive salary but a stipend for their meetings. And then most recently, the council provided direction that as a part of this council compensation committee, that the scope should be broadened to be a review of all advisory bodies and whether or not compensation should be awarded.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, the council's policies and procedures establish the makeup of the committee. What that policy says is that we will appoint a 7-member committee. 1 member shall be a previously elected official, 1 member should be a member of the Personnel Board, and 1 member should be a citizen at large. Now, I realize that only equates to 3 members, so the remaining 4 can be in from any of those categories. The committee member must be a resident and a registered voter of the city of San Luis Obispo. As Greg mentioned, the committee's recommendation will be provided to council at the end of March. This meets the requirement that the council must take action prior to May 1st, so we will meet that. And of course, any adopted changes would not go into effect until January 2027, after the new council is elected. So now on to how we're going to vote and how we're going to do this. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it's gonna be a tad bit cumbersome because we do have a lot of people and we have to do this all on it live. So we're going to, at the recommendation of the mayor, we're going to vote for the previously elected and the personnel board members first. And then you have the ability to move any of those down into the at-large category and vote for them along the at-large. So we'll do the at-large second. So right now, you all have ballots. So just vote for 1 previously elected person and 1 personnel board member.
And we don't have to have public comment or anything on this item first, or can we vote now? Oh.
Do you have any public comment slips?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
So now you can vote for those, and Greg's going to collect all of them? There were none. There were none.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. None of them wrote their names?
No, we have 2. There's 3.
I said it was going to be cumbersome. I was not kidding. Yeah, well, I can't share the right thing. The Elmo, yeah. I still have Elmo. There we go. Here we go. Okay. Now we're here. Oops. Okay, so as we can see, Andy Pease was selected because 3 of you had voted for her. and then Jill Lemieux. It will be our Personnel Board member. Now, on your next piece of paper, okay, write your names. And now at the at-large, you can select 5, and you'll notice that I did add the other previously elected into there, just you cannot vote for Andy Pease or Jill in the at-large section.
And Vice Mayor had something to add.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment real quick before we vote, because we had a very large, as we always do in the wonderful community that we live in, we had a large pool of people that were interested in supporting this effort. And we only get to choose 5 people off of this very long list. And so I just want to say that I'm super grateful that we have such interested community members that want to be part of our process. And I wish we could have all of you. So, but thank you for being willing to serve. And I hope that those who are not appointed, because we can't have everybody, continue to offer their volunteer service in another way.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I will say ditto to that. Okay. Thank you. They'll come back.
I'll get confused. My little brain probably can't handle it.
Thank you.
I should have it checking me. I'm confused. Oh, oh. There we go. Oops. Oh, is that right? Oops, that's one more down. Okay. So Aaron Foote, Carrie Howell, Trent Johnson, Barry Price, And Joy, oh, wow, okay. I thought it was going to take us more. Okay, so that is your council compensation committee. Alrighty.
That wasn't as painful as we expected.
Yeah, and it didn't take, yeah, I wasn't optimistic. You saw I had extra points in hers.
Well, thank you. We are so excited to have the 7 people serving: Andy Pease, Jill Lemieux, Aaron Foote, Carrie Howell, Trent Johnson, Barry Price, and Joy Singh. Thank you so much. And we'll do a motion to accept the 7 people on the list that we just listed. Is there a second? Councilmember Marks.
I'd like to move the results as reported by the city clerk as for appointment to the council compensation
I just
committee.
did I just did the motion, so if you want a second.
Okay, all right, so I'll second it.
Can we have roll call?
Mayor Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Francis,
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shorsman.
Yes.
And the motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much to the team for putting so many great people up, and thank you, City Clerk, for putting the great election up. And thank you to all of the community members who were willing to serve and are now going to be on the committee. So with that, we will move to our last part of the liaison reports and communications. Vice Mayor, have you start.
Okay. I am just kind of trying to thumb through my calendar and see what's been going on. I did have the opportunity to go to the Muse Market this last weekend in the old Ross building, and I hope it seemed very well attended, and lots of some of the vendors that you see at some of our other events, but also many new vendors that I was not familiar with, and lots of activity going on. So hopefully all of you got a chance to go check that out, and hopefully it is a good introduction to more events like that in our downtown area, whether in that building or not. It really worked well, and seemed like there were a lot of people enjoying and purchasing things, so that's good. I think as of now, the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is that we have a Homeless Services Oversight Council meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock at the Department of Social Services, and so I will leave it there. Keep it short and sweet.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Boswell.
Just a couple things. One is on Thursday, there's a LAFCO meeting. We have an item on sphere of influence amendment for the Cal Poly property on Slack Street. So community development staff will be there, but I'll be there as liaison observing as well. Other than that, I've taken the opportunity this summer, given I have more free time than normal, to do lots of tours of city facilities and properties. So I just wanted to publicly thank the staff who've been really great, taking good care of me and answering all my questions, no matter how ridiculous they are. So thanks to staff.
Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Yes, well, on the 18th, I went to the Air Pollution Control District meeting, and we got the yearly report about the quality of air in the whole county, and it was basically very good news, especially with the dunes, the vegetation of the shore dunes in the all-terrain vehicle riding area has made a huge difference in terms of keeping down the dust. And so even though certain people fought it tooth and nail, it turns out nature is on our side, and so we're going to keep that up. Also on the 18th, I went to a panel discussion on protecting public lands that Salud Carbajal participated in. It was organized by Kara Woodruff, John Laird's legislative assistant. And it was very well attended, and basic message is there's a lot to protect and a lot of advocacy that we're going to have to do and stand up and fight to keep public lands from being sold off to the highest bidder. On the 25th, I went to the Welcome Home Village ribbon cutting. This is still June, right? Along with, I think, everybody else. Yeah. So, and I'll let the mayor talk more about that. On the 26th, I did meet with Spencer Brandt, whom we heard tonight. He's the new 3CE Community Relations member, and he's someone that I've known through a mutual friend, Molly Culver, who's the late Molly Culver, so I've known him for a while. I think he's going to do a good job. On the 7th of July was Kobe Sky's first day as Executive Director of the Integrated Waste Management Authority. And I'm not going to read his whole resume, but his last job was Deputy Director of Environmental Services for the Public Works Department of Los Angeles County for the whole thing. He was in charge of sustainable waste management, the LA County Zero Waste Program, and coordinated extensive stakeholder engagement. And he's worked his way up basically with LA County, basically in solid waste and recycling. So he's a subject matter expert. I think he's already made a really good influence now he's in his second week, so. Upcoming July 29th is a green business panel, which is run by the Chamber. It's one of their inside studios. And Ashley, who's the program director at the Integrated Waste Management Authority, is going to be one of the guests. It's at the Agape Church on Laurel Lane, Laureate Way. So anyway, I'm planning to attend that, and I hope others can do that as well. It's organized by EcoSlow and the Chamber. And then looking at integrated waste management, the next meeting is August 13th, which I will not be able to attend, and Michelle Shoresman, the alternate, is already getting up to speed. So you'll do fine. And that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, thank you so much. On the 26th, we had our monthly CapSlow board meeting. There's continuing concern, particularly around some HHS requirements, eligibility requirements or guidelines that came out this week around grant funding and who's eligible for it. And that's going to have some pretty major impacts on community service block grants and family planning, WIC, Head Start, all things that are really central to the mission and services of CapSlow. So no changes yet, but we're kind of watching and waiting to see what comes out of that. And in the spirit of that, on the 11th of October, there's going to be an event at Rodenhammer for Friends of 40 Prado, raising money to try and maybe preemptively fill some of this gap and take care of our community members. So I'd encourage anybody who can to buy a ticket and help support a great organization. We also, this month, said farewell to Kevin Christian in the clerk's office, and it's going to be incredibly missed. Anybody who's been down to a meeting will miss his presence at the front door. And also very much enjoyed the Muse Market. Got a fabulous maple side table that looks beautiful. So I'm so excited to see events like that in the community. That's it.
That's awesome. Thank you. I thought you were going to say maple donut or something. I was confused. Anyway, so this has been busy as we have just had a meeting and then not again for a while, so bear with me. So we had the Performing Arts Committee meeting where we continue to talk about the roof and the repairs that will take for us and the foundation and the Performing Arts Center. So a lot coming up with that. But in good news is the PAC and Cal Poly Arts, the season has been presented, so check out the new performances. There are some really great ones. In fact, one that I'm gonna miss in January that I was really hoping I'd be there for. So we had the Mayor Advisory Council. So thankful for everyone who serves on the advisory bodies. I mean, just so much work is happening. And in our community, I think people may not see all of that work that is happening, but if you ever want to, you can check out the entire report. There's lots of exciting things. Also, in the mayor role, I often meet with different people that have, it's not an official committee meeting, but just to give a few, met with some people regarding IFC and Panhellenic at Cal Poly, met with the Vice President of Student Affairs / Vice President of Strategic Enrollment about belonging on campus and diversity challenges, as well as the students and noise challenges they're having in the community. Also met with someone who really would like us to have an indoor swimming pool for access. Met with someone regarding the immigration issues that have been happening around us and in the community, as well as with Spencer Brandt from 3CE. So people often ask to meet, and I often say, yes, let's do this, and let's figure out what you're needing in the city, what you want in the city, what's working, what's not. On the Cal Cities hat, this Thursday and Friday, City Attorney and I will be going to the statewide board meeting. Last week, I was on the nominations committee. We did a Zoom meeting for 6.5 hours, I believe it was, interviewing many people to figure out how we can have a good variety of small cities, large cities, different aspects to everyone's positions, as well as our Channel Counties division, which is SLO County, Ventura County, and Santa Barbara County. Did some planning this week for our key bills for cities review that we'll have on July 29th, as well as our next regional meeting and planning successions and looking at our bylaws. Had a fabulous time yesterday at the French Park Monday meetup. It is such a great experience. I hope you go to one of the Monday meetups if you haven't already. The next one's Emerson Park, July 28th, and it's so great to see the neighbors coming out, enjoying each other, and then also all the trucks coming out and the food trucks and sharing local businesses. That was wonderful. On a side note, on our personal note, we got to host a pitcher for the SLO Blues, and that was so fun. And if you've never hosted a player, I really encourage it. I also just love going to the SLO Blues. It's very hometown, very much a fun part of San Luis Obispo. Lastly, the kickoff for the Festival Mosaic and the fair are tomorrow. So hope that you'll enjoy your favorite fair food or favorite fair experience. I'm going to look for our city window, see if we have one this year, who knows. And then lastly, I will be touring on July 25th, the Elkhorn Battery Storage at Moss Landing to have a full understanding of what battery storage is looking like for us, not us in the community, but us as far as a region and what that entails. So thanks so much for the listening to my long report, but there's been a lot in the past month and will be in the next couple of weeks. So we will see you all after the vacation or the council break. And for anyone who's going anywhere, enjoy, and we'll see you all on August 15th. Nope, August 19th. Sorry about that. Have a wonderful summer.
Okay.